Good evening, everyone. Miss Brianne, for invocation. And you're with New Covenant Fellowship?
And the Titusville Fire Department chaplain.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I face
Go
you
ahead.
or turn around?
Whichever you prefer.
All right, I'll turn around.
Okay.
Let's pray. Heavenly gracious Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for the incredible day that you've given us, for the beauty. Father, we thank you for the breath that you give us and the people that are here today. Father, I just ask for your presence and your wisdom as citizens, elected officials, and people interested in what's going on in our incredible county come together. I just ask for clarity in decision making. I ask for your blessing and your provision over the agenda, and that any resolutions that need to be sought are found in you. Father, we thank you for this time together. We thank you for those who have given up their precious time from family or from other responsibilities to be here today, because we believe in working together for our county. God, we trust this time with you. We believe that you are doing everything for your good in your precious and holy name. Amen.
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 Thank you.
Thank you so much. You should appreciate it. Stand for the pledge.
pledge.
All right, we have no minutes for approval. Who's this? Yes.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Santa.
Got it right there.
Yes. Ho, ho, ho. Happy holidays. I've checked my list twice and found that all of you commissioners have made the nice list this year for making good decisions for the citizens of Brevard during these tough times. For your outstanding service to the county, I've brought each of you a little something. Commissioner Tobiah, I heard you didn't need much this year for Christmas because you already have that wind-up toy car, but I still brought you a little something since you were a good boy. Commissioner Smith, I hear this is your last year while serving on the board. For your 8 years of service, you probably deserve a big gift like a new jet ski.
All right.
But the elves couldn't make that happen. So for you, I brought you this instead.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Pritchett, I know you've had a tough year serving as chair, and it's no easy job making sure that people are well-behaved. I should know. That's why I make lists. For you, for your hard work this past year, we have this for you.
Thank you, Santa.
And Commissioner Zonka, I hear that you and your team of elves collect gifts for some very special seniors. Since I'm a senior myself, I appreciate what your office does to make sure that these elders have a happy holiday. For all the work you've done for Brevard's aging population, this gift is for you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lober, way over there. I've seen you do a lot of good work for the Brevard residents this year. I hear you have a big election next year. So it's up to the citizens of District 2 to decide if you've been naughty or nice. Not me. The North Pole policy does not allow for campaign donations, but I thought you might like that gift.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. County Manager Abate. He's looking up like, uh-oh. I see it's your job to keep the group happy. No easy task, I'm sure. I wish I could give you the gift of a long vacation on some exotic location, but with the new COVID travel restrictions, you may not get back, and these guys would miss you too much. I guess this gift will have to do. And County Attorney Jordanby, I hear you have just started in this position. If I were the Wizard of Oz, I would give you the Medal of Courage. But since I can't do this, I hope this gift will do. And clerks to the board, you definitely deserve a little something for trying to keep up with these people, and I think these sweet treats might do the trick. And with that, I have to get going. I've got a lot to do today, getting ready for the big day. Keep working hard for your constituents and making good choices. Hopefully, I'll see you all on the nice list again next year.
Thank you, Santa.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, do you guys want to get a picture with Santa real fast?
Good idea.
There you go.
Good there.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
Yeah, I'll probably do.
I guess I got to brush up on my public speaking. Sure.
Thank you. That was amazing.
I bumbled through,
You
but I
guys
made
are
it.
to stay up there.
Stand in the picture.
Ornaments.
Good job.
All right, good deal.
Thanks, Santa.
Merry
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Don't forget stuff. All right, I will.
Frank.
All right, resolutions? Believe this,
That's a
Commissioner
hard
Smith.
act to follow. All right, Liz Alward. And group.
Brought some friends.
All right. It's nice to see all of you here. Whereas homelessness has caused or hastened the deaths of inadequately housed low-income persons in Brevard County. And whereas the spirit of the holiday season of giving provides an opportunity for affirmation and renewal regarding the commitment to end homelessness. And whereas December 21st, the first day of winter and the longest night of the year, has been designated National Homeless Persons Memorial Day by the National Coalition for the Homeless. Whereas the Brevard Continuum of Care Coalition has planned countywide memorial events recognizing homeless people who have died in our country. And whereas in this season of generosity and sharing, citizens of Brevard County are encouraged to commit themselves to promoting compassion and concern for fellow citizens, especially those who are poor and homeless. Whereas, in remembering those who have died on our streets, in our emergency shelters, and in condemned or abandoned properties from ailments or conditions directly related to homelessness, the cause of ending homelessness is kept urgent, as is the collective commitment to preventing such deaths in the future. Now therefore be it resolved that the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners does hereby designate Tuesday, December 21st, 2021, as National Homeless Persons Memorial Day, done, ordered, and adopted in regular session on the 7th day of December, 2021. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept this resolution.
I have a motion by Commissioner Smith,
I'll second it.
second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Commissioners, for having us here tonight to recognize Monday, December 21st, 2021 as National Homeless Persons Memorial Day, a day of recognition of all those who passed away while being homeless. My name is Liz Alward, and for the past 2 years I have served as the chairman of the Brevard Homeless Coalition, the lead agency for the Brevard County Continuum of Care with a mission to prevent and end homelessness. During my time with the BHC, we went from a staff of 2 working from home, we were a homeless coalition, with a $500,000 budget to currently administrating approximately $6.2 million and established office space located centrally in Suntree. We hired a new executive director, Amber Carroll, who has been with us 1 year yesterday, and 5 key staff that are behind me, 5 key staff positions who work with the board of directors and other community leaders to identify ways to streamline BHC operations and improve working relationships within the Brevard community. So we work through the federal and state funding, HUD and DCF, not unlike Ian's group, and this year the BHC was also awarded multiple grants related to COVID with the mission to prevent, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19. The new funds have been awarded to our existing providers who are able to maintain their current capacity of service to the community, ensuring that there isn't a drop in the quality of care. I want to name some of them because I think you're going to recognize these are some of the greatest providers in our community. 211 Brevard, Brevard Cares, Catholic Charities of Central Florida, Community of Hope, Crosswinds Youth Services, Daily Bread, Eckerd Connects, Family Promise of Brevard, Inc., Genesis House, Housing for the Homeless, Inc., North Brevard Charities, Sharing Center, South Brevard Sharing Center, South Brevard Women's Center, and Volunteers of America. The remaining funds will go to increase the overall capacity by expanding existing projects, $800,000 to the Street to Home Bridge Housing Program in the City of Melbourne, and I see Paul Alfrey is here, so we've been working with the City of Melbourne on trying to get this program going. Piloting new projects, $1.4 million in District 2 Family Promise Firehouse renovation project, and filling in the gaps of service by identifying and empowering new agencies to address the disparities in our system of care. We continue to look for funding partners and opportunity. Wink, wink. So as we approach December 21st, the first day of winter and the longest night of the year for those living in homelessness, nighttime is not a time of peaceful rest. There is no home to retreat to and to escape the stress of the day. Nighttime is the coldest, loneliest, and for many, the most dangerous part of the day. For so many, the winter solace is not a day, but a season in their life, a time in their lives that their days have more darkness than light. Fortunately, the Brevard Homeless Coalition has a continuum care of providers that bring hope and a welcoming place of refuge no matter where they spent the night, the street, a shelter, the woods. They are there to help. Even as we hold the memories of those who have passed, we also know many that have survived the night and found a better life. So on behalf of the Brevard Homeless Coalition and the Brevard County Continuum of Care, thank you for caring. Thank you for your support. And thank you for ensuring that we never have to turn anyone away. Together, we are saving lives and changing lives. So with that, I'd like to introduce Amber Carroll, and she's going to say a few words on behalf of the BHC.
Well, thank you, Liz, and thank you. We just wanted to take a moment and invite you to join us on the 21st. We are having the memorial services in 2 different locations. Jeff and Daily Bread are going to be hosting at their location on Fee Avenue. Anything you want to share about that?
Yep, 3 p.m. on the 21st.
Okay. And then at 5 o'clock, we'll be in Titusville at Sandpoint Park. So we would love for you to be there to join us in memory. That's it.
Anyone else?
Special thanks to Commissioner Lober from Housing for Homeless. He knows why.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All righty.
Madam Chair, I do have a question.
Sure.
That's all right. I really loved working with Dr. Moore when she was involved in your group, and I'm just wondering if someone's taken her place in more or less an equivalent position, and if so, which individual that might be.
That would be Amber Carroll, and
Okay.
she's got our 1-year anniversary with us yesterday.
All right, excellent. Welcome. Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you.
All right, you want to sit down? You want to go along the steps? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. All right, we're moving into consent. Commissioners, do we have any items you want pulled? I have no cards.
Madam Chair, there are a couple items I'd like.
Okay.
F13 and F16, if I may.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to vote no without comment on F9 and pull F15, Madam Chair.
Okay, is that it?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve consent with the exception of F13, 15, and 16.
So moved.
Motion by
second it.
Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. F13.
With respect to F13, I don't have a problem with approving at this time, but what I would like to do, and I've spoken with staff, I don't believe that staff has an objection to it. I certainly invite Mr. Fiscal or anyone else on staff to jump in if that's different than their understanding. Along with moving to approve this, I'd also like to have direction go out to staff that when this comes back again, that they should attempt to obtain no less than 3 quotes for comparable policy or for competitive policy.
And Commissioner, we have no problem with that. We can continue to do that. It has been our policy, and it was the case for this year's renewal as well.
So that's the motion, if I may.
Okay, motion. Did you get the motion? Motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. F15.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a handout here. This is on an appointment. And pursuant to past board discussion regarding individuals who have made personal attacks against commissioners, I wanted to inform Commissioner Smith that one of his appointees, George Kistner, had something very similar on the Historic Commission. In this case, however, it is not a personal attack that is disturbing to me, but the fact that this individual showed a sheer lack of judgment while doing so. Mr. Kistner's statements, while he was an appointee to this board, went so far as to constitute a sunshine violation. While the disbandment of the Historical Commission was likely to come before the board, Mr. Kistner sent out emails on the subject via his official port email, which I discovered through a public record request. Further, Mr. Kistner also engaged in political discussion over his official email with other members of the commission. Again, has been handed out. While it's my understanding that Mr. Kistner's actions were addressed by his employer at the port, to say that he showed extremely poor judgment is an understatement. In any case, I thought it was worthwhile informing Commissioner Smith of this in the open. However, should Commissioner Smith wish to continue with his request for the reappointment of Mr. Kistner, I would support him in doing so. And as a side note, Mr. Kistner was my appointee at the time when he said these things in full disclosure. But all of that stuff is here, and if Commissioner Smith is okay with Mr. Kistner's lack of judgment and what could potentially cause, liability for the county, I would support him if he believes he's grown from this situation in the past.
Commissioner Lober?
I'm really struggling with how much I really want to say on this, Commissioner Smith. I generally appreciate a lot of your efforts. I agree with you certainly more often than I disagree with you. I was not going to pull this item, but given that the item was pulled for the reason that Commissioner Tobias stated, I just want to put out there that I think this board, each of the individuals on it, really need to do some reflection as to how much deference is truly appropriate to show other individuals with respect to their appointees. I don't know that there's anything to be gained at this point for me to go over the appointment that I think you imagine is likely the cause of my concern today. I know my wife has told me I need to pick my battles, and frankly, she's right more often than she's wrong. I know she's going to...
You're a wise man to understand that.
Yeah, and we have a 10th anniversary coming up, so I'm hoping to have another 10 and 10 after and stay alive for the entire duration of that. But that said, there have been some actions of this board, one particular action in the recent past that I think was essentially reflective of a double standard, but I am doing my utmost and exercising considerable restraint, not escalating based upon that having occurred. I'm going to support whichever appointments you have today, whether it's the individual that Commissioner Tabaya has an issue with. Frankly, I've heard what he's had to say on that. I don't have an opinion in terms of anything new to add with respect to that. I think you understand, without our needing to have had a conversation with respect to the other appointment that's of concern to me for the reasons that I've articulated in the past, why it's a concern. But I think that, we need to have some sort of a solid idea moving forward, each of us, in terms of really how much deference is appropriate. And I don't want to threaten or intimate anything, but I just think that needs to be said. So I'll support the appointments if that's the board's wish at this point.
Commissioner Smith, do you have any input?
How did you know I wanted to say something?
Well, you didn't have your light on, but I'm assuming.
Yeah, I was about to do that. Well, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, and I want to look into it. I wish you had reached out to me beforehand. So my question is to Abby, if we approve these tonight, can I rescind this going forward, or is it an appointment that we're committed to for, 2 years?
So essentially, you'd be approving it tonight, so the individual will be appointed to that board. At that point in time, I'd have to look into the code as far as how to remove them. I believe we have procedures if for some reason they do not attend the meetings, but off the top of my head, I'd have to look to see. I believe the board could remove them by a vote of the board. It would not necessarily be a board commissioner unless there was a request by the individual to resign from the position.
Right. Well, I respect the opinion of my fellow commissioners, and I would like to look into it.
Just hold that appointment then.
Well, then, I was going to say, could we hold that appointment or table the whole thing? Just,
That particular appointment or
well, if I can do just that particular appointment, then I can
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I request to do so then.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Smith to approve this item with the exception of his appointment to the Historical Commission.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, F16.
Madam Chair, my understanding, having spoken with staff about this item, and frankly, I'm going to defer to Commissioner Pritchett if she has a strong feeling one way or the other, as this certainly disproportionately impacts her, but perhaps impacts my district the second most of all. Though this was advertised, and I don't have any concern with staff having done what they were legally required to do in that sense, there were only 2 applications for the 2 seats. And I think to advertise it, again, might be a wise thing. One of the individuals, to the best of my understanding, has been on for 20-some-odd years. I know that this board, at least in part at my prodding, has implemented term limits on other committees for an 8-year period of time. So to have someone that's been on there for 20-some-odd years is a little bit troubling. But I would defer to Commissioner Pritchett. If she's okay with it as is, I'll support it. But I just wanted to bring it up and see what the thoughts were.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Thank you, sir. I know we're trying to get a renewal of board members, but like you said, we advertise, it's hard to come in. But what I like about this is 2 of the women, and they're both delightful women. Maureen Roop, she's really spicy up there, so I kind of enjoy her on it. And then Billy Fitzgerald, she just brings a whole nother layer. So I'm not real sure that Maureen will probably serve again the next time. So Dr. McAterian, they're good appointments, correct? I've sat in on them. I thought they brought a lot to the table, so if you're good, I'm good with it.
I'll make a motion to approve then.
Okay,
I have a motion by Commissioner Lober,
second?
second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And before we move on to public comments, I have Mayor Paul Alfrey here who would like to address the board for a moment. If you guys don't have an issue with that, I'll have him come up.
I don't know, Mayor, should we have an issue with it?
Well, actually, the only time I figured I'd see Santa this year would be here, so that's why I probably really came. But anyway, first off, before I start, I want to thank you for the time to come address you. Chairwoman Zonka, County Commission, really appreciate your relationship with the City of Melbourne. We've done amazing, great things. Our staff works great with your staff. And again, I truly appreciate it, and so does my board. As I came before you, I guess several months ago, was regarding the old O'Galley CRA, and we're going to instruct to build a parking garage. I mean, coming before you, nothing is looking to change when it comes to what we're asking, the funding. I really appreciate the commission helping me move the CRA money to the parking garage. I think that was a very good move. And again, the letter that I sent each one of you, and I believe your staff also got it last week, was kind of the breakdown. What we're looking at now, what I'd like to do is have the ability of a couple modifications on this, just so we can look at a possible partnership with a proposed hotel. As you know, and in the sunshine, as you know, Mr. Jarnes had purchased a Fusner Museum, and he's looking to build an O'Galley hotel. And part of that would be a parking garage that he would need. Well, we're building a parking garage as well. So what we're looking for basically is just to adjust the modification that would allow us to possibly let him join in and build a couple floors on it to satisfy not only parking for downtown O'Galley, free parking. Again, none of that has changed on the spaces or anything, but it would also suffice for the hotel as well. So, for example, if it was going to be 2 floors, it would be 4 floors. Again, the funding would not change or the terms or anything. So that's what we're looking at, is just to have that modification change slightly so we can look at possibly doing this. As I said before, when I came before you, I would come before you and discuss any moves or anything we're doing. And again, that's another reason that I'm here. So again, to ask for this. Again, I sent you guys this memorandum last week, and again, I'm here to really field any questions that you would have or concerns, et cetera.
Great. I'm sure there may be some questions. Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mayor. As soon as our office got your letter, called you, and you picked up the phone immediately. Mm-hmm. And I want to thank you as well as the city for working together to bring this CRA in for a landing. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, looking at this a little bit more, there are more questions that probably popped up than at first glance might have been assumed. As this is bonded money, whether it's a taxable bond or a non-taxable bond, could come into play because of the extra amount of spaces and the outside dollars that go into it. Mm-hmm. I guess county staff has looked at this and spoken with our bond folks, and there could be some issues. While I'm not opposed to this, certainly I don't want to call into play many of the positives that our interlocal brought into play. So it's not something I would be comfortable voting for right now, but certainly I don't even think we have to direct our staff. I think our staff wants to work with your staff to get together in a place that we're not going to cause any issues with the current interlocal by expanding it the way it's currently set. Mm-hmm. So if it was only that easy to take the extra money and put on a couple extra floors and not jeopardize the bonding, mm-hmm. you'd have my full support. Unfortunately, mm-hmm. it sounds like there are some issues that come up. I don't know that we can get around them, but we just got it here recently. So mm-hmm. maybe, our staff and your staff can get together to see if we can get over this hump.
Sure, and that's part of the proposal where, again, this is just the beginning stages. And again, we're looking at this. This is nothing set in stone, but it would be a good idea that if we could get something done this way and actually save money, which is a possibility, because as a fact in construction, when you mobilize and you do a whole project at once, as opposed to coming back and doing a project, ripping out one of the roads and then coming back, ripping out the road again to do now the hotel, if something could be done all in one stretch and save taxpayer money and actually build a bigger facility or whatever, that would be idea. So that's why I came before you today to see, to kind of touch base, answer any questions. Again, I'm sure that there's there's more questions that may come up when it comes to the bonding, et cetera, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I don't know those answers yet. I'm not a bonding agent or an attorney, but, you know, we have that, we have those folks that could help us with this. But again, that's what I'm here for tonight, to discuss this with you and see if you have any other questions, or if we are able to move forward and just kind of look at this.
Commissioner Lober?
Now, Mayor Alfrey, a couple things. First, you are a sharp dresser, and I say that because I have that exact same sport jacket.
You go to Walmart?
I would never admit it if I did.
Okay, I'm just saying.
Now, that said, I don't disagree with anything that Commissioner Tobias stated for once. I know it's an oddity, but I do agree with what he had just mentioned. What I'll say, though, Mr. Jarnes, I believe actually on today's agenda on the appointment sheet, he was just appointed as my TDC rep. I don't want people to think that there's some conspiracy going on where we're trying to benefit Mr. Jarnes, although I certainly don't wish him ill. If he's successful, wonderful, that's capitalism at work. For that reason, and also wanting to have a little bit more by way of staff input, I would be happy if you're asking us to have staff work with your staff.
That's it.
And then bring something back for our consideration. If you want that motion, I'll make it, but I'm just not comfortable, other than asking staff to get with your city staff, doing anything that would change the particulars tonight. So if you want that, I'll go ahead and make a motion.
And Commissioner, I just wanted to be clear with Commissioner Tobias, the whole board, that we when I stood up here before, we had an agreement. We discussed what the goal was for the CRA to build infrastructure, and I gave you my word that I would come back and discuss any movement, any changes. So I almost felt that it was important, or that I did come back and do that for all of you. So that would be great. Again, our staff works wonderful with your staff, and again, a motion's not going to get anything done or built. Basically, there's some challenges ahead, and it may not work. And if it doesn't work, at least we can say we tried.
You tell me if you want the motion. It's made.
That'd be great. I mean,
I don't know that we need a motion.
Yeah,
I think
up to you all.
staff's already working on it. Commissioner
Okay.
Pritchett?
I want to start out with, you're doing a really great job, by the way, and I appreciate what you're doing. I am in favor of this, but the opinions of Commissioner Zonk and Tobias will weigh the heaviest with me because it directly affects them the most. So I'm going to probably support whatever it is they feel like they need to do, and so.
Somebody's ring.
I like that. Okay. So then I guess then we'll just have our staff work with your staff and move forward and see, because again, the bond issue, if that becomes an issue, that's something that may prohibit it. We don't know yet. But anyway, I wanted to at least come by, and I thank you for your time. Again, it's good to see Santa, because again, my kids have been bad at home, and I doubt if he'll be at my house. But again, thank you all, and have a good day. All right?
Thank you,
Take
Mayor.
care, sir.
All right. Moving on to public comments. I have 2 cards. Janice Scott. Hi. If you just state your name and city, please.
Janice Scott, resident of Cocoa Beach. Nice to see you all here, one of the last meetings of the year. Yay, everybody loves that. I was a little bit disappointed not to see anything on the agenda recognizing today being the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor. I saw an elderly gentleman, and he really didn't look a day over 80, but he remembered every minute of Pearl Harbor's attack. And I was quite impressed. He spoke very eloquently, and geez, just looked like a young fellow still. Also, since I was coming here for another issue, I had planned also to speak to about Mr. Abate. I watch him on these meetings every time you all meet. And as a former, and probably the eldest living former mayor of Cocoa Beach, I've been through a lot of managers. And I have to say, Mr. Abate, that if I may address him directly, I hope when you retire that you will mentor whoever follows you. You must have great staff. They must do a great job also, but you seem sort of unflappable. And our city just went through a very expensive headhunting and ended up with basically 2 candidates, and they were from out of the county. I think it's important for the cities in Brevard, as well as the county, to look within their own county for competent professionals. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking that draft for me.
Madam
Thank
Chair?
you. Can we get through the public comments
Sure.
first? Ms. Sullivan?
Good evening and happy holidays.
I know we know you, but name?
Yeah, Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. So I've been doing a few records requests relating to impact fees. And I've been looking at some other areas, and I noticed that our impact fee schedule, the last time it was updated was 2007, so that was 15 years ago. Of course, everything is much more expensive now. It's in that duration, infrastructure costs, construction costs. So in looking at some other areas of Florida, I see that some of them are doing studies on revising their impact fees. So in the interests of seeing some of our costly infrastructure, on this agenda, we had almost $7 million for water. In the last meeting, we had a 7.9 increase averaged out over 5 years per year for water and sewage. And so we talk about at these meetings quite a bit about our infrastructure costs. So when I was looking, I did on one of my records requests, there was the amount that they had paid previously on the first-time development was written off the impact fees. For a new cycle, when you consider 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years, when a building gets redeveloped, you've gone through a whole infrastructure cycle. So I don't think writing off impact fees that were paid years ago should be something that we should be doing. So I just wanted to make a few suggestions with, since we talk about infrastructure costs so much and we have so much development going on, I saw that the fees of Brevard County are, in some cases, a third of what they are in other counties. So if you would consider that thoughtful suggestion, and maybe it would benefit all of Brevard. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lober?
A couple quick thoughts. First, to echo what our former mayor of Cocoa Beach, Ms. Scott, had mentioned. Frank, I'm not trying to butter you up for anything. There is no ask. But I'll tell you, we do occasionally get complaints. We've got a 4-digit number of employees in the organization about some of them. Sometimes I agree with the complaints, sometimes I disagree with the complaints, sometimes I agree with them in part. I struggle to remember anyone ever having complained to me about Mr. Abate, though. So it's nice to see that someone who I don't think was put up to do it came and gave him some positive recognition. He certainly deserves it for tolerating the 5 of us up here. I can't imagine that's an easy task on most days. As to what Ms. Sullivan mentioned, I don't know that looking at comps is necessarily the most informative in terms of being able to form a basis for our decisions. And the reason I say that is when I think of an impact fee, I really focus on the wording itself, the impact, and what the impact of that development is. And I truly don't know at this point whether our impact fees pay more than the actual impact, roughly offset the impact, or alternatively, if they're not sufficient to accommodate the impact that is anticipated based on the development. I'd imagine there's some where the calculation may differ somewhat substantially based on the particulars of the project. But before I would consider anything in that front, I really would want to have a better idea from staff, because if we're not offsetting them, whether it's too high or too low, I would certainly be open to discussing it at the very minimum. Whether we change it or not, though, I'm not remotely in a stance at this point where even if we're a third or a 30th of what another county is, prior to knowing what the actual impacts are relative to what we charge. But it's an interesting item that you bring up. Thank you.
Okay, I have no more cards, so moving on to item H1.
Yes, good evening. So this is a hearing for the purposes of the Federal Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, referred to as TEFRA, as required by Section 147, subsection F of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, as amended the code regarding the possible issuance by the Capital Trust Agency of one or more installments or series of its educational facilities revenue bonds, Imagine Schools at West Melbourne project, Series 2021, in an aggregate principal amount of not to exceed $18.5 million.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve it.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner
Well,
Lober.
We actually do need to have the
Yeah, I
additional
was
portion.
going to take the motion. And a second by Commissioner Pritchett. And I don't have any cards on this other than for questions, but is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak for or against the bonds or the project to be financed? And have we gotten any written communication?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, I haven't either. Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Just got nervous, that's all.
Okay. Item I1, and I have a John Constantina.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is the Work Group for Innovative Solar Energy Resources Clean Energy Transition Plan and their other recommendations, cost-benefit analysis. John Constantinidi is the Vice Chair. Unfortunately, the Chair couldn't join us this evening. We've got other members of WISER in the audience as well, but this is the culmination of their year of work.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I appreciate the opportunity from Commissioner Lober to be appointed to this work group. This work group has taken over a year to provide you with information on how to move forward with a clean energy plan. And I'd like to start out with the accomplishments, because the county has done quite a bit in the past decade. First off, Con Edison Solutions completed an investment-grade audit that recommended energy conservation measures, ECMs, and I'm going to mention those. Those are basically measures that the county implemented to save energy and water. And over $9 million has been avoided in cost from implementation of those measures, and an annual savings of $45,000. Furthermore, Brevard County has waived photovoltaic or PV permit fees since March of 2018. The current program expires in 2023, so there's a possible consideration there to renew that program. But since then, there have been over 1,200 solar voltaic fees waived from 2018 to 2021, valued at over $300,000. So that has a significant impact for our community. And in 2019, Brevard County approved FPL Solar Together program. And as I'm going to show on the next slide, that is where Brevard County invested in a solar community co-op where Brevard County gets solar power from a solar farm that others are involved in, and in return gets those savings from an initial cost put in. So as we can see in years 1 through 6, actually, not 1 through 4 if you have in your PowerPoints and notes, there's a cost. But that is recuperated or recovered in years 7 through 11. And then from there, you have up to year 30, over $10 million of accumulated savings. So that is a great move and investment on the county's part. So what are we looking to improve on or recommend as WISER, since so many accomplishments have been done? Well, we have 3 deliverables we're providing: an energy reduction implementation plan, a facility clean energy transition plan, and an alternative fuel and electric vehicle fleet transition plan. These are guiding, living documents to be considered for implementation for funding. Keep in mind that we have also recommendations to improve public access. That is the second goal that was placed for WISER. And we're recommending to provide support for events that highlight clean energy. Education is very important in the community. Government cannot do it alone. Promote solar-ready construction. Provide education and dissemination of information about optional energy-efficient construction, such as the International Green Construction Code powered by ASHRAE Standard 189.1 and weatherization techniques promulgated by the U.S. federal government. So here we have existing practices where we do not need to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. We can take industry standards and guidelines that have been proven. And we can also support our local Florida Solar Energy Center and other related community efforts. Finally, as a third goal, Identifying policy and practices that serve as barriers to the adoption of advanced energy technology within the county and make recommendations on policy revisions. Supporting financial alternatives such as grants, reducing permitting costs such as that has already been done, and impact fees for homeowners and home builders to offset future strain on infrastructure in anticipation of future population growth is one pathway. Supporting the development and hiring of maintenance personnel to maintain and repair solar, renewable, and electric building and vehicle assets. We're talking a lot in industry and in government about electrification, and decarbonization. Very hot buzzwords. And that simply means having more of an electrical infrastructure. So having that staff to support that gets the county ready for that future technology. And adopting those codes, as well as local additions to the Florida Building Code eventually, to provide the county with suitable additions that are appropriate for the local area. So in summary, 6 recommendations: pursuing energy conservation grants for the implementation of clean energy adoption strategies, prioritizing no-match grants, identifying and implementing those additional ECMs I've mentioned earlier. Consider creating an energy manager or employing a contractor for energy management, positioning and preparing the county to transition to alternative fuel and electric infrastructure, further develop an energy management plan for solar and PV, and finally, partnering with the community to transition not only the government, but residences and commercial entities to clean energy sources. Wiser thanks you and is happy to continue its service if it is the pleasure of the board. Thank you.
I have cards, but I have a couple lights on, so I'd like to get through the cards first
Sure.
if possible. We may call you back up, it's possible.
Appreciate it.
I have Bill DeBusk. And after Bill, Bruce Lindsay.
Hey, hi. My name's Bill DeBusk. I'm a citizen of West Melbourne. I'm also a member of the Wiser Working Group. I think John did a great job. I'm also a chairperson for the local Sierra Club, Turtle Coast Group. And I'm just here to really thank you all in person for having this working group. I think it was a very valuable thing for the county. And I'd also like to just go through a little bit of one of my visions that's in this report. In the not so distant future, is a lot of change coming, and one of those big changes, whether we like it or not, is the transition for transportation to electric vehicles. And that transition is going to provide some opportunities, I think, to Brevard County and their infrastructure changes, where we can provide additional energy that those vehicles are going to need through clean energy means. And we talk about some of that in these documents, where you can add solar to some of the Brevard County government buildings, perhaps with batteries, to offset the additional power beyond what we've already signed up for with the Florida Solar Together, FP&L Solar Together program. And that additional power not only will provide power for electric vehicles, electric transportation, but will also provide resilience for a number of these buildings, keep the lights on during hurricanes, other natural disasters, as well as one thing that FP&L Solar Together program doesn't do is it doesn't reduce the cost for peak energy demand. So we still have peak energy demands on a lot of these big buildings, and those costs don't go away with the Florida Solar Together program, but it can be offset with power from batteries and solar in those peak parts of the day when energy is high. So anyway, that's just kind of a little bit of vision that is also in those documents that I will express. But mostly I just want to come up here and thank you all for having this group get together, and I hope this is a useful documentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bruce?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to come and speak today. I'm Bruce Lindsay. I'm an alternate on WISER, and I serve as the Energy Manager of Public Schools, Brevard Public Schools. First, thank you for the opportunity to serve on WISER and influence the county's clean energy plan. I was hoping one of our other members would address the controversial component of our clean energy plan. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of it, because I am sure there will be constituents that will bring up the fact that we did not recommend putting solar PV panels on every single building the county owns. And I want to explain why we didn't recommend that. We debated it extensively. We have a lot of people who really believe that solar PV has to be put on every building. Instead, we are really strongly recommending that we participate in the Florida Power and Light Solar Together program. Solar PV is a great technology, but it's also very expensive. It's getting cheaper, and we see it being adopted in California, Nevada, Arizona. But that's because grid power, the utility power, costs 25 cents a kilowatt hour in California. We pay significantly less. Additionally, there's a 30% investment tax credit on those solar panels. So in California, with the higher priced electricity, we're talking about a simple payback of 3 to 5 years. And as a homeowner, I would jump on that. You come to Brevard County, our residential electric rates are 12 cents, less than half of what they're paying in California. Payback jumps to 9 to 10 years. That may be attractive to some homeowners. When you come to county buildings, we're on a commercial electric rate that's 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour. We do not get an investment tax credit because the county doesn't pay federal taxes. Our payback is going to be well over 20 years, okay? And that's before we add batteries, which are really essential to have resiliency. So I wanted you to know that we thought about it long and hard. I wanted you to be able to tell your constituents that we looked at it and looked at it and looked at it, and that's why we're strongly recommending going with the solar together. There's no capital investment. You can cancel the contract any time. It's really a no-brainer. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lisa Ruckman? Lisa? Oh.
I was wondering, can I have the rest of the board members go before me, or I can speak now?
Your name's...
Okay,
yeah,
that's fine. I didn't want to step in front of them. I wanted to thank you all for putting together the WISER board and for this important transition for all the energy stuff that's going on now. You've appointed some great members to the board, and I've really been impressed with the range of expertise from the different members that were part of it. I also want to thank them all for doing a wonderful job. Also, I want to thank you guys for doing the energy audit in the past, for doing signing up for the FPL solar program. All that stuff is, putting us on the right track. We're in a new market of innovation right now with energy. Around the whole wide world, everything's changing, including electric vehicles are now in mass production. And I'm hoping that we can join at least 50 other municipalities in the state that have staff that are focused on these issues, finding ways to save more tax dollars and make our county more resilient. Hurricanes being the first thing that comes to mind. Staff members, these 50 staff members that are around the state are supporting each other, sharing ideas with each other on what's actually working in our state of Florida, because Florida is a little bit different than other places. And one way that that's worked is that some municipalities have hired, either had a staff member, just have part-time working towards these dedicated ideas, or they bring in and/or have brought in interns. That's a lower budget option for starting on new projects and new ideas. I'm suggesting that maybe one thing that could be started with is looking into companies that install chargers for electric vehicles. There are some that apparently will come and work with either local businesses or local I guess, government areas, they'll install them for free because then they can, make a profit off of the vehicles being charged there. As more electric vehicles are on the road, visitors now look to see if an area they're going to have those electric chargers available to them before they want to make sure they can charge up before they go someplace. Depending on where you put those chargers is where that car is going to sit for a little while. They're going to shop, go to restaurants, all that sort of thing. Nowadays this is needed infrastructure as all these cars are coming on the road. And I'm kind of hoping that maybe with the new federal infrastructure bill, that maybe, I know there's provisions in there to help places locally, and I'm hoping that that there are some options in there that can help us locally in this transition to these other vehicles and stuff. So thank you so much for the time. Thanks for having the board. And again, thanks to the board themselves.
Thanks. William Young. And after William, we have Kimberly Newton.
I'm William Young.
I love your tie.
Thank you. I'm from Titusville. Commissioner Pritchard here set me up on this, and obviously.
You're awesome. You're awesome.
She likes me, so but then I'm old, so I've been around. I'd like to thank you all for looking at this and making this move, and having this commission set up and having us do this program and set up this plan. I think the team you picked from all of you was very good. They all were knowledgeable. They worked together. They worked hard. They're very interested, and we have a plan. But as most plans, when you have a group of people, there are some differences on how things are done. So this is a consensus of everyone. One of the things in the plan was to work with the Florida Solar Energy Center as a program. Florida, and especially Brevard County, is very lucky to have such an organization within its bounds. I just happen to work there, but that's beside the point. So I have some handouts. Am I allowed to give you handouts?
Sure.
Okay, this is my house.
Just give them to me and I'll give them.
That's my house. This is the project we did. And this here is an example. I started doing solar in 1979. Okay, my house is a 1903. It was built before there was electricity in the town of Titusville. And I have a picture of a house down the street that had solar hot water put on it in 1923. So they put 11 systems on my street. Okay. The one other picture here is this right here. This is what's called a zero energy home. All these issues I'm talking about are things that are in the plan that you're going to look at. So the one thing Bruce was talking about was the payback. The solar on my house was paid back in 9 years. So that means I've been getting free services or reduced cost. Reduced costs in the past 6 or 7 years that saved me money, which I did so I could retire and have lower costs. Okay, so I have a lot of ideas of how to do things. But this house here, you can see the date on the bottom is 1983. Okay, so the solar hot water on our street was 1923. Socrates wrote a book on solar-powered houses 2,700 years ago. Okay. Florida Solar Energy. Oh, I'm out of time. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank
you. Got
you.
my pictures.
Kimberly?
Hi, good evening. Kimberly Newton, I'm a member of the Wiser Board and Chair for our U.S. Green Building Council Brevard Local Market. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to serve on this Wiser Board. Thank you, Commissioner Zonka, for appointing me. It was a great opportunity. I'd just like to mention that it's been 2 years since the WISER Board was established. And in that 2 years, there has been a lot of progress in renewable and clean energy across our county, in separate municipalities, across the state, globally. There's been a lot in Cape Canaveral, Melbourne, Palm Bay. Those are some of our gems here in Brevard County, among others that I didn't mention. It's definitely it's definitely been a great opportunity. And it has shown that Brevard, it's a definite and absolute that we will be transitioning to clean and renewable energy sooner than later. We hope that there's a focus on energy conservation and weatherization of existing buildings at some point soon. And I hope that the plan that we did create can help move that forward in the best, most cost-effective way that is accessible to everyone. So I do also hope that you can see the amount of work that we did put into the creation of this document and for the presentation that John gave this evening. Our main goal is definitely to benefit the county as a whole and our individual residents as well. So thank you again. I hope that the plan is approved, and either way, however the vote goes this evening, again, I look forward to seeing Brevard move forward in the renewable and clean energy space. So thank you again.
Thank you. All right, Commissioner Tobias.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I believe this agenda item is the quintessential reason why government tends to expand. When this board was initially created, it was allotted roughly $1,200. Here we are 2 years later, that has expanded to more than $6,000 and 228 hours of valuable staff time that could be serving other constituents. I'm glad that some of the speakers brought up the PV fee waive that came out of one of our offices without the WISER board. The solar co-op came directly out of the county manager's office. So the two accomplishments mentioned happened aside from this board. I was surprised while reading through the plan. I had to wait all the way to page 3 before this board made a recommendation to increase the size of government even more by having another employee to oversee this. Thankfully, the individual who wrote this, again, coming out of my office, created a sunshine provision on this. So I'm glad to say if we take no action, this board can waste no more valuable tax dollars as we move forward. So I thank everyone for their time going in, but the reality of the situation, I think you'd find it hard-pressed, any of us that read, I did, the 18 pages, but I don't think it's worthy of continuing at this point. Your suggestions and those of the public are always welcome here. The forum is free and doesn't cost taxpayers any money. Unfortunately, this board does. So I'd ask that we take no action and disband the WISER board.
Commissioner Lober?
I want to ask him how he really feels, but I'm not going to do that. I have a few comments, and then I want to go through on the second page of the cover sheet the recommendations, some of which I agree with, some of which I don't, and some of which I think are going to depend on the cost and the benefits. So to comment on a few things. First, Commissioner Tobias, I think, mentioned it was $6,000 and 228 staff hours. I may be wrong, but I think the $6,000 was the 228 staff hours. Am I wrong?
It was actually about $1,500 of advertising costs, and then the remainder, the $4,500, was staff time. Okay, so it's not
6,000 and 228. It's 6,000 inclusive of the 228.
Yes, sir.
All right, I appreciate that. I think there's some good ideas and there's some bad ideas. First, as far as the charging stations for electric vehicles, I've looked into that to a reasonable degree in my office. I've reached out to several providers, including FPL. The concern that I have, and I've spoken with county legal, even under Abby's predecessor, was that the program, which I know at least one nearby locality made use of, yes, they did pay to do the install, but the counterbalance of that is that the locality itself was obligated to pay for the cost of electricity. We couldn't put up a credit card reader and allow people to swipe and actually pay their own way with or without an administrative fee to cover our cost of administering the program. If we had it as a benefit that we could restrict to our own constituents, I still would probably have concerns with it, but the thought of paying to have tourists charge their vehicles on our tax dollar, it's beyond what I can tolerate. I think if we're doing new construction, obviously when we're pouring concrete or asphalt, the cost to put in conduit before that's down is dirt cheap. And if you want to put that in to run whatever you want in the future to keep the options open at a minimal cost on the front end, wonderful. As far as the FPL Solar Together program, I appreciate Wiser and I appreciate staff having included that in the presentation that we saw. I will pat this board on the back. There are many things this board does that I disagree with. That was not one of them, though. I think that was a great maneuver. I think it was very decent of this board to elect to move forward on a plan that saves us money over a period of decades, even though it costs us money over political careers or four-year election cycles. So I think that was definitely a good move. To the degree that we want to increase investment in comparable plans, again, I think it's all an opportunity cost question along with cost and benefits. And I apologize for the folks that have taken time out of their day from the board who came here, who might not have gotten the warmest reception based on some of the initial comments that we had just heard. I don't think you guys are bad guys by any means or bad ladies by any means. I appreciate that you're serving on an unpaid board, taking your time in the evening when you could be doing anything of value or watching a movie and hanging out with your dog or cat at home, spouse, what have you, kids. So thank you. First off, I give you guys that. A few things. As to the actual recommendations that you all have, and I'm just going through at the beginning here, the second page of the agenda item where you have a numbered list 1 through 6 and then another numbered list 1 through 4. As far as pursuing energy conservation grants, the first item and prioritizing no match grants, great. I think that's absolutely wonderful. Mr. Abate was wise enough to bring on a grant writer for the county who is brand new to the county, and I think we can make use of our existing grant writer, or our new grant writer, I should say, to look into that. As far as, that's my number one, yes, certainly. The one that I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum with is number 3, and I think maybe Commissioner Tobias will agree with me at least on this. In terms of considering creating an energy manager position, I just don't think it's necessary. I think that, frankly, there are a couple, 2 or 3 steps that we can take that are much, much less expensive than that will get us potentially the same return. So first, as I mentioned a moment ago, we do have a grant writer now on county staff. I think we make use of that individual, certainly for projects of this sort, wonderful. I think that in terms of the idea that was brought up by one of the Wiser members to bring on interns, we've got a program in HR where we can certainly do that. I don't have a problem with that if staff is comfortable with it. That certainly makes a degree of sense. And I think the third item that we could do is continue Wiser. I do agree that when you have a program, whether it's committee or anything else for that matter, that starts out at a particular cost and we're down the road at a multiple of the cost, it is reasonable to keep some safeguards there and to put some safeguards in place. So I would be open to having Wiser continue. I wouldn't want it to meet more often than every other month or potentially even less often than quarterly. I think that's probably a reasonable middle ground where we keep the costs down, and if staff has the impression that things are escalating beyond where they are now, I would certainly be open to them coming to the board and asking us for direction to see what the will of the board is at that time. But I think there's enough value in continuing it, albeit not a free-for-all where you meet as often as you want and you have prime rib and filet mignon brought in. I don't think you guys are doing that by any means, but I just, I do agree with Commissioner Tobias in terms of his concerns about increasing the size of government. I do think there are potentially appropriate safeguards. As to the other items, 2, 4, 5, and 6 on that topmost list, to me, it's all a question of cost, benefits, and opportunity costs. So, certainly there are things that I would be open to as opposed to number 3, which I would not be open to, just based on what staff advises the likely cost and the likely benefits are. And as to that second numbered list, for
Commissioner
allowing...
Lober?
Yeah.
Commissioner Pritchett would like to speak. I would just suggest if you have things from this report that you want to bring back, maybe you bring it back to the board for
Yeah, I
consideration.
can do that if you want. Sure.
Just to kind of move things along, because this is, I think, going to be a bit of a long meeting, and we have people waiting.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
Is that okay? Are
Yeah,
you,
absolutely.
Are you done?
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's fine.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Scott, got a lot from you.
Say ditto.
I'm good with supporting this. I know there's a lot of money coming down from the federal government for things like this, so it's actually a good time to have this board together. If you guys want to make some tweaks as far as meeting times and stuff, I'm good too, but I'm supportive of it.
And maybe a suggestion as far as, the utilization of staff time is that, maybe limit the amount of things that staff is designated to investigate, maybe not meet quite as often, like we discussed today at our Builders Roundtable. I think that you've done the meat of the hard work, and you kind of have a plan in place. Maybe just meeting semi-annually will probably, just to see if there's any updates, to have some discussion, but this way we're not utilizing loads of staff time or having to notice meetings and that sort of thing. Because I don't think disbanding it's the way to go either. I think it's important that we kind of keep an eye on the things that are available, like grants and that sort of thing.
Are you looking for a motion, Madam Chair?
Sure.
Hey, I don't have a problem keeping it perhaps a little less, and maybe rather than every other month, we say quarterly, if that's something you can live with. I just would rather not step back and take the foot totally off the gas, or maybe to that degree of doing it semi-annually yet. I'd like to propose that we continue Wiser meeting quarterly, that we prioritize that first item, pursuing energy conservation grants and prioritizing no-match grants, making as much use as we can of our existing grant writer, having staff free to bring on interns as staff deems appropriate to assist. And then beyond that, is there anything else you'd like to see in the motion, either Commissioner Pritchett or? I guess we should probably address the plan too. What do you want to do with respect to that? Do you want to approve it as a guiding but not binding doc, or do you want to just take no action as to it?
I think some of the things on the document are a little unrealistic, at least at this point, for the county to achieve. I mean, I think a lot of this is none of it's actual action. It's just identifying, pursue, that sort of thing. So I think if you want actionable items, those have to come back to the board individually because there's a cost associated with it.
I'll just leave the motion as I've stated then, and I guess we just simply won't take action as to the plan. I'm fine with that too.
Is that okay? Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, everybody knows, I think everybody knows, that I have solar panels on my roof, and I'm very energy conscious. But as one gentleman, and I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, mentioned that the government pays roughly 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So how much can you really save with investing in solar for the county? So my personal opinion is I would suggest before we make a vote tonight, maybe we go back to the drawing board and think about this till the next meeting and see if we really want to go forward with this. I love the idea. I love the purpose of what you guys are doing. I really appreciate all the work you've put in. You've come up with some good information. But I personally just don't see that the value is there. I know you guys feel like you're doing something worthwhile. I haven't been convinced, and I don't see it. So I wouldn't vote for it tonight, but I would say let's take a step back and everybody wait a week or 2 weeks and revisit it.
Commissioner Lober?
Commissioner Smith, if I may, I don't necessarily agree or disagree with what you said, because I don't know that the level of specificity necessary to make a directional choice with respect to that has been laid out. The motion that I had phrased doesn't bind us one way or the other in terms of either obligating us to expend any resources in pursuing solar in terms of placing them on buildings or ordering things or anything of that nature, or alternatively preclude the board or staff bringing an item forward to us that would suggest that we do that. So, I'm focusing more on whether we continue Wiser and whether we, at least in part, to the non-controversial or less controversial portions of what they've recommended, if we go forward and at least identify to staff that, yes, we would like to prioritize grant opportunities, especially where there are no match requirements.
Well, and I agree with you. The grant opportunities are something that we should be aware of and focus on, but I don't know that we need a board, a separate board to do that.
That's fair.
That's my point.
Okay. So I have a motion by Commissioner Lober. Do you want him to repeat the motion?
I'll do it concisely.
Right.
Why are you laughing? No, essentially, the motion is to allow Wiser to continue meeting quarterly, not in any other setting. If staff feels that the usage of staff is becoming burdensome, staff is to advise the board by adding an agenda item to an upcoming meeting agenda. And as to that first item, with respect to striving to pursue grant opportunities and prioritizing no-match grants, that staff is directed to further that particular goal, making use as reasonable of our grant writer who's newly on our staff, if staff deems it appropriate, additionally interns, and then through the input of Wiser through their quarterly meetings.
That was not concise.
Pretty good, though.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you. And just so I understand it, so we are not going to recognize the one document that came out of this board, but yet continue the board? Is that the motion?
Yeah, I think there's some good
Okay.
that's come out of it, but yes.
I'll be voting no on that one.
Commissioner Pritchett?
My only question is, ma'am, would you still support it if it's quarterly, or are you only going to support it if it's semi-annual?
Well, I mean, I would be more comfortable if it was semi-annual
Because
because,
count and vote, so I'm just trying to figure out where your most comfort is.
and I would only be comfortable supporting the meeting. I wouldn't be comfortable
Yeah.
with telling them to pursue anything at this point without an agenda item that's specific to what we're asking them to do.
Yes, well, ma'am.
So there's no confusion, there's no ambiguity. So I definitely want to,
So I think you're kind of like the
I'm
heavyweight
only
here,
going to
so-
support that we don't disband them, I guess.
Okay.
How about how about 3 times a year? Because again, we're at least compromising to a degree. I just don't want to make it semi-annually because I think that's too long a gap between their meeting. It just makes me uncomfortable in terms of delaying it that long.
Commissioner, do you support that?
I would prefer to be semi-annually. I'm not trying to be stubborn, I'm just trying to have the best use of staff time, because they come to all of our board meetings, and we have so many boards, and a lot of them do great work, but I don't want to be forced to prioritize, so I'd be in support of semi-annually, without any action.
Yeah, I'll just withdraw the motion outright then.
Okay. Motion withdrawn.
Okay, I make a motion for the board to continue meetings semi-annually, and we'll let them continue with their work, and that's just my motion, to continue the board semi-annually.
I have a motion by Commissioner Pritchett. Do I have a second? Fails for lack of second.
Yeah.
I guess I could have seconded it, but it probably would have failed anyway if no one.
Yeah, I agree. So what do you do if you
All
have
right,
no vote
so
at
are we
all?
doing anything at this point? What's the board's desire?
Move to the next item.
So no action? Because right now, without action, they're meeting, how often? Staff?
She said, yeah.
Correct.
What's that?
What was your question? I'm sorry?
With no action, what is the status of the board?
They're sunset.
Okay, all right. I just wanted that clear. All right.
That's good. Commissioner Tobias.
All right, moving on to item I3. Commissioner Tobias, are you going to take the lead on this, or is staff? This is your item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On October 26th, I discussed the potential for reimbursing county employees to get their concealed weapons permit under Florida law, and thankfully, the board was supportive in doing that investigation. Brevard County Human Resources Department, in conjunction with the County Attorney's Office, did that research, and they found out that there's potential for significant detrimental consequences to the county in implementing such a regime. As such, it is requested the board decline to move forward with this policy as previously suggested. I just wanted to take the opportunity, first of all, thank the board for allowing me to move forward with this, and secondarily, thank staff both in the county attorney's office as well as human resources for investigating this. As to the best of my knowledge, no cities and counties had moved forward on this stuff, so this was ground that had not been trod upon. So again, I'm not asking for any motion here because there would be significant impacts on our insurance premiums, but thank you for everyone providing me that leeway to move forward on this one.
Thank you, Commissioner Tobias. Moving on to item J1.
Yes, Madam Chair and Commissioners, item J1 is for the board's consideration 2 major events grants, one for Space Coast Air Show, the other for Thunder on Cocoa Beach boat races. Both were approved unanimously in the amounts of $73,000 each by the TDC.
Motion to approve District 2.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Pritchett. I have a card, Ms. Janice Scott.
Janice Scott, Cocoa Beach. I hadn't seen this on the agenda, and I wasn't able to find out how much these grants were, but I do want to add for public sort of edification, I'm not an avid bird person who makes lists and goes around, puts them on Facebook and so on and so forth. However, with the Bird Festival, 25th year this year, moving to the Radisson in Cape Canaveral is a huge impact on tourism and all the hotels in Cocoa Beach. And I didn't hear that they are included in any kind of substantial grant to support their festival. And I think they need the money, and I really do think that what they do, the numbers of people they attract to Brevard County, especially now that it's been moved closer to the hotels, once the people come, they will be piggybacking on going on cruises and doing other things around here, maybe, moving on to other things, but events in the county. It's a great family activity, inexpensive to free, and it also keeps senior citizens out of trouble. So I hope that going along in the future that the Bird Festival will get some kind of significant grant, because I think it's only like $3,000 this year. I don't know, I see Mr. Cran is here, he might be able to say. But I sort of lost my train of thought. But I do, the next largest bird festival in the United States is in New River Valley in Virginia. So I really do think this is the biggest birding event in the Southeast. So come on, give them some more money. Thank you.
And ma'am, just so you're aware, this is the major events ordinance, or major events grant. This does not have to do with funding. Okay.
Madam Chair, just a point, the Bird Festival did receive a cultural grant. I don't remember the exact amount, but these major event grants were, if you recall, the guidelines that the board approved were for larger events with, 25,000 plus attendees or more. So the Birding Festival fell into a different grant category. They did receive money, though.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'll just say, and I have no problem with funding these air shows, but I would just caution this board. I mean, these are large amounts of money, and typically, we should have grants in place that support these sort of events, not really bankroll them. So I'm going to support it this time, but I would just caution in the future. I'd like to re-look at this, the guidelines, because I think that these are specific and only a few people would actually qualify, even though it's a major event. And I just want to make sure that we're not basically funding the entire, or at least funding the event, because if that's the case, we need to put it out and let people bid on it at that point. So, all right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Motion passes 4-1.
Madam Chair, could I ask for a 5-minute recess?
Sure. We're going to take 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item J2.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, this is a request to approve a resolution authorizing the Florida Development Finance Corporation to issue bonds in amounts in excess of $7.5 million for Brightline Trains Florida LLC to finance a portion of the cost of intercity rail projects located within the county and the approval of an agreement between the board and Brightline Trains Florida LLC. The resolution and the agreement provide the county with railroad grade crossings for an additional 8 years or 2 full cycles, whichever is greater, after the train operates within the county. The county also will receive $616,000 for a bond waiver. These funds will be deposited into the county's public works for future maintenance of rail crossings. The county has no liability related to these bonds issued by the Florida Development Finance Corporation. The county's bond counsel and financial advisor has reviewed the resolution, and it meets federal and state legal requirements and provides neither the county nor any of the elected officials or staff of the county any obligation or liability, and are solely secured by revenue of Brightline Trains Florida LLC.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Thank you, ma'am. I wrote this down because I really didn't want to mess this up tonight. I want to thank Brightline and the county staff for working so hard towards this maintenance agreement and getting the continuation 8 years beyond what we already have. The safety of high-speed rail is it's a top priority, and I'm very supportive of that. But I would like to emphasize that the hope of a long-term economic plan for Brevard to get a station, I really, 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 really want a station, that this would greatly drive an economic increase to Brevard County and the Cocoa area. The city of Cocoa is willing to set aside some funds for a station. I would hope that we could maybe utilize some of these funds or maybe be prepared if we need to, that we have designated to Brightline in our community to partner with the city of Cocoa and Brightline and join in a public-private partnership. Now, my question is, and I know you're here, is if Brightline, may I ask if you have any vision for a station at all? And if so, when can we build it?
Yes.
Good evening. I'm Christine Kefauver, and I'm with Brightline Trains in corporate development, so right up your alley here. And I've spent 30 years of my career, most of it here in Florida, of which this is my 3rd time around talking about high-speed rail for Florida. So I'm really excited that not only have we begun our operations or restarted our operations in South Florida, which is incredibly important, so that's our phase 1. Phase 2, as you know, is under construction, of which over 70 miles of it is going right through Brevard County. Our number 1 priority next is to complete that construction to get it to Orlando International Airport. But absolutely, we want to look for opportunities, just as we have done after we got operational in South Florida, as we're doing in Boca, of looking at an additional station. So we commit to you, maybe in the new year, if that would be okay with you, to begin to work with county staff to identify location. And I've met with Georgiana, and she made sure she provided this to me of the previous study to look at station locations and work that has already been done in the county. So we'll continue to look at identify potential station location, a financing plan, which may include partnerships, as you mentioned, and then possibly, as we've done in Boca, go together in pursuit of possible additional federal funding to build out that collective program. I mentioned that I've worked in Central Florida for almost 30 years and spent 7 years as Mayor Dyer's transportation policy advisor. And working on Sunrail was my number 1 project for 7 years. And it's the power of partnerships that get us to be able to complete and do big projects. So we look forward to doing that. And so maybe in the new year, start to get together. You tell us who from the county you'd like us to meet with, as well as the TPO, and let's begin those conversations.
Thank you. I was kind of hoping you were going to come and say that, because I'm so excited about the thought of that, to have that kind of economic driver, kind of more in the north end as for some of this. And I was just kind of hoping to get something extra that way. And Right now, Brightline just kind of blows through the county, and you kind of wave at us all your way along. So it would be nice to get a stop. And then I'm kind of hoping, that's going to be the next one, that you make a path up to Jacksonville.
We keep hearing that as well.
Yeah.
So the goal is absolutely get to OIA, and then we're working our way to Tampa. Sometimes it's a little bit more than we have to say grace over as we work through these big projects, but connecting the state through high-speed rail, and Brightline's the only company in America doing this from the private sector. So it's not easy, and I get reminded regularly from friends, if it were easy, it'd be done by now. So we're working hard towards it, so thank you for your support, and we'll continue to work forward.
Thank you, Commissioners. If you want me to do anything with it to help or anything not to do with it to help, I'm at your service on it. So, thank you.
Commissioner Lober?
All right. This is one of those items I was hoping to be able to support. I just can't the way that it's phrased at this point, and that may come as a surprise to folks up here, because I think when we had the item pertaining to Debbie Mayfield that came up, I was probably the least negative toward Brightline at the time. I want to explain why I'm in the position that I'm in, and then, if it's all right, ask a question of Abby and ask a question of Mr. Denninghoff to hopefully put you on notice of the information as I see it and the assurances that we have, or lack thereof, as I see it. First thing to keep in mind is that the status quo is fine. None of us caused this item to be put on tonight's agenda. So the fact of the matter is, from Brevard's perspective, this is something that we were approached and asked to do. In dealing with Brightline and dealing with folks that represent Brightline, coming up to this particular agenda item, I was reminded as recently as yesterday, and perhaps even earlier this evening, about the negotiations that took place in the past. What I will say with respect to those negotiations is that those were an arm's length transaction conducted by two well-funded entities, a governmental entity and a rail entity. No one was coerced, no one was misled, no one was tricked. Everyone had the ability to do as much due diligence as they felt was appropriate at the time. If someone failed to make a good bargain, or they failed to include an item that later became material to them, I'm sorry, this is not a charitable entity that we're dealing with. And even if it were, I really don't like taking tax dollars or an opportunity that we have and squandering it if there's not a profound benefit to our constituents. And if that were the case, I wouldn't be squandering it to begin with. So the concern that I have is a couple-fold. I'm really going to focus on one particular item that's, I think, of the utmost importance. Commissioner Pritchett, you had mentioned that the safety of high-speed rail a moment ago is our top priority, or something along those lines. I agree with you. The Brightline rep had mentioned the power of partnerships is something that's important. I agree with that as well. So to that end, when we look at a 72 or so mile long county, we have got dozens upon dozens of crossings. I can tell you within, a couple mile radius of where I get onto US 1 to go from point A to point B, whether it's north or south, there are quite a few of them. One of them, I believe the traffic number, and I may be off to some degree, but the traffic number last I saw for State Road 520 and State Road 520 and US Highway 1 was around 80,000 cars a day. I may be off in that, but it was tremendous traffic. I'm sure that there are in Palm Bay a number of different intersections that have high traffic as well. One of the items that I was looking at for several reasons. Number one, first and foremost, for safety purposes, and secondarily to potentially get a quiet zone so that we don't have the trains honking and honking, bothering people during the time that they're operating, if it's avoidable, was having quad arms put on each of those major crossings, especially where we have high traffic areas, like, for instance, down in Palm Bay, or in my neck of the woods, in the dead center of Cocoa at State Road 520 and US 1. I just this evening was shown some diagrams, I believe, that were submitted, or engineering sketches that were submitted in the permitting process, that show several of the intersections near where I live in the center of the county, Vieira Boulevard in 1, Barnes in 1, 520 in 1, where they don't have those quad arms. To offset that, Brightline informed me, and they may be right, I just don't know, that an elevated median coupled with the standard, or I should say the minimal, 2 arms is designed essentially to prevent the same thing that forearms is designed to prevent, keeping people from swerving or into the oncoming direction of travel in order to weave in and out of the tracks, which none of us want. Now, here's the thing. When I asked whether or not that was sufficient in order to enable us to seek or to obtain quiet zones, essentially I got language along the lines of, well, it should be, or we believe it is. That's wonderful, but believing that something is or something should be, that doesn't really guarantee me anything, and it doesn't put me in a position where I have any confidence. Right now, we have leverage. Right now, we have a position of strength because we don't need anything. The bottom line is that now we have an opportunity to ensure that all appropriate safety measures are put in place, or that we have the resources to ensure that all appropriate safety measures are put in place. If we squander that, it's gone for good, and we're going to have to eat into our tax dollars in order to make improvements as may be appropriate in the future. What I had proposed to Brightline, and I believe it was run by them, at least a couple of their folks yesterday and again today, was the $500,000 that was put in place during the prior negotiations, where they have gotten and continue to get the full benefit of their bargain, having nothing whatsoever to do with tonight's request, which is separate and distinct from that. I don't know whether that's enough to effectuate any necessary improvements to the crossings. And again, there are dozens and dozens throughout the county. I don't know that that's sufficient to put quad arms in if that's something that we need for a quiet zone. I can tell you that the answer I've gotten from staff and from Brightline has been consistent in that it's a regulatory process to obtain quiet zones, and essentially there are points that are assigned based upon different safety devices, whether it's an elevated median, whether it's quadruple arms to prevent folks from coming in and going out of the crossing. I truly don't know. And hearing things that aren't definitive and not having any guarantee, it doesn't help me. An agreement to agree or an agreement to, try to help us walk through the process doesn't help. I can tell you the rep that I spoke with yesterday talked about working with our Senate Majority Leader, who last I heard was horribly, horribly negative toward Brightline. And I'm not saying she's wrong for having been that. It's irrelevant what I think in terms of her historic position with Brightline. So telling me that you're going to work with someone, or you commit to work with someone to secure state funding or other funding, when the entity with whom the entity that's suggesting that particular arrangement has a horrible historical relationship with that individual, it doesn't leave me confident. So what I had suggested to them was they take an amount equal to what they've already given, the $500,000, and let's have them put the money where the mouth is with a minimal risk to them. Put it in escrow. We don't take a penny out of it unless the $500,000 that we currently have, again, that they've gotten the full benefit for, unless that proves insufficient for us to make the necessary safety upgrades to get those quiet zones. If it is insufficient for those safety upgrades to get the quiet zones, then we can dip into the escrowed $500,000 that I've asked them to put aside in order to effectuate those changes. If we don't need to do that, they get every penny back, and the only lost is the minuscule amount of interest that they could have earned on $500,000. I don't know in truth whether $500,000 would be enough, but I think given the historic negotiations, it at least has a frame of reference, and there's some significance to that number. So I'll end it by asking staff a couple questions. First, to Mr. Denninghoff, are you at all confident, or would you care to comment on the $500,000 that was previously provided, and whether that would be sufficient to obtain quiet zones throughout the county and the numerous dozens and dozens of crossings that we have?
I really don't have a feel for what the cost of the quiet zones will be. Never been involved with such a thing, and we've not done research that I'm aware of to identify what those costs might be.
I appreciate that, Mr. Denninghoff. And that's essentially the problem. I don't know either. And I think if Brightline is truly as confident as they represent themselves to be, and they may be, this is a minimally costly way to get this done, where we ensure that our constituents are protected, where we don't have lapses where we should have safety devices. Beyond that, Abby, we heard I believe from Commissioner Pritchett at the beginning of this, and also from the rep from Brightline, that there was some commitment to working with us to meet with staff and look into a potential location for a station here. That doesn't even reach the level of an agreement to agree to me. It's an agreement to have a meeting. Is there any legal significance to that whatsoever? Are they actually obligated to do anything based upon what they had offered to do?
So essentially, the item on tonight's agenda is regarding the bonds. As far as meeting with staff, I mean, that was something that, Brightline has committed to doing. So obviously, we don't know where the parties will end up on that. in that decision. So, I mean.
So if we approve this, they could say, no, we changed our mind and kind of go and do what they wish to do.
Being good community partners, I would hope they wouldn't, but I mean.
Me too. So again, we have a position of strength. I'm not asking for them to spend really anything, but to put money aside to ensure the safety of our constituents throughout the county, and also secondarily to get those quiet zones. I would love to have a station here. I would love to have one in Cocoa if that's an appropriate location. I've spoken with Stockton over there. I certainly support the idea, as does he. But I can tell you, us pushing them isn't going to change whether or not it's profitable for them to do it. So in the end of the day, either it's profitable or it's not profitable. But I think we have an opportunity essentially to take no action tonight, to let them know, hey, it's not that you dictate the terms and we simply rubber stamp it, or we can rubber stamp it and we can go in that direction.
May I address a couple of the issues that
Sure,
were brought
go
up?
ahead.
And that is the FRA process. The Federal Railroad Administration is who grants a quiet zone based on the infrastructure that is in place. There are 50 railroad crossings throughout the county, including those in the cities, some that FDOT manages as well. In our design and permitting and construction process, we have evaluated each of those crossings to look at what is the most suitable solution for those. And when the Federal Railroad Administration looks at a quiet zone risk index, that's really what they use to evaluate whether or not you can move forward with a quiet zone. Our collective technical team evaluated the entire county to look at ways that you could get to that index level in which you can get a quiet zone. That is for the public sector, the county or the TPO, to apply for. I have a list of all 50 of those crossings, and yes, some of them have quad gates because that's what's most appropriate in the design of that and the safety of that crossing, and some have non-mountable curbs in between, as well as a gate. So if somebody really, really, really wants to break the law, I mean, what we're trying to do is create the safest environment possible. I think that's what we all want. You want, and we want as well. So we have in our design and our permitting that's been submitted to the county what each and every one of those crossings look like. And our team is confident that through that design, we've looked at and evaluated the FRA criteria. We're quite confident that that will pass. Now, in addition to that $500,000 that was put in there, so if additional evaluation or infrastructure needs to be put in place, there is a pot of money. And then through this agreement as well, there was an additional $616,000 as part of this bond financing that goes to the county as well. So Brightline does feel as if we've done all the due diligence and design and look to implement a program that meets what you're looking for, Commissioner, as well as what we're looking for as well. I mentioned that I worked on the Sunrail project. FDOT owns and operates that program right now. When they bought the 61 miles throughout 4 counties, they had not $1 for quiet zones for any of those communities. So what we'd really like to do is recognize the investment that Brightline is making in Brevard County, because this was a priority for you, and we feel as if we've addressed those through our design and construction.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have some concerns with this. And while I appreciate Commissioner Lober taking a approach dealing with safety and quiet zones, I take a fiscal approach on this. And the basis is relatively the same, that we can stay with the status quo, but I want to talk about what potentially is coming up. While this would get us something to the neighborhood of 16 years, it leaves future elected officials on the hook to the tune of about $1 million a year. Recall that we're going to have to deal as commissioners with infrastructure that was not taken care of by our predecessors. We look back and say, I wish they would have maintained it. Now we're going to enter in potentially to an agreement that will leave people that will sit in these very seats, as well as other seats, which I'm about to talk about, on the hook, remember, to the tune of roughly $1 million. This clearly, as Commissioner Lober said, is not the best deal that we can get. The railroads have been given these rights in perpetuity. So what I would be asking is that the railroads would maintain these crossings in perpetuity. Now, many times, individual citizens come up here and talk about the circumstances of their families and ask for fines to be reduced, and out of the goodness of our hearts, usually your hearts, not mine, we lower them or dismiss them. This is not such a case. This is a multi-billion-dollar company that we would be providing resources, tax resources, not our resources, but taxpayers' resources in the future. The second point to this is 27 crossings are maintained by municipalities. So it's not just us that would be entering into this agreement. We would be forcing our local partners to maintain these crossings as we move forward. Because of this proposed agreement has a massive fiscal impact, again, that is not just borne by the county, but by the cities and our state partners. Madam Chair, I have a couple quick questions for Ms. Kiefhofer, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Kiefhofer, I appreciate you doing your words due diligence and evaluating each crossing. One of the crossings is a private landowner. Can you tell me about that?
Are you speaking of Rinker?
Yes.
What would you like to know?
Have you discussed this with Rinker?
I have not personally,
Okay. So,
but the team has. I mean, we've been working with, out in the community. A point of clarification, it is the bright line is the railroad. The crossings are local, state roads that are crossing our corridor. So what we're doing is creating the safest environment of those crossings. So in many other areas, it's the state and/or county and/or city that is their responsibility. So we've taken on that responsibility as part of this agreement. So I want to make sure we don't mix apples and oranges here. Our responsibility is to maintain our corridor. We're going above and beyond by making these additional investments.
yeah, and just to be clear, if you were, you wouldn't be here. You're coming and asking something from this county commission. You're coming and asking for something that is going to get you preferential treatment when it comes to bonding. You have the ability to go to private bonding, I'm sure get higher rates, but you've decided to make an economic decision, the same way that you'll make an economic decision on whether to put a stop in cocoa. Quite frankly, I don't care.
Okay.
It is your decision. What I'm concerned about is the future taxpayers. One, that not only as individuals but cities. And you said, do you have the sign off from Rinker that they're okay with that agreement?
There's no agreement with Rinker. It's improving the crossing there.
Well, Rinker, my understanding is this is an agreement that would be with the county and the municipalities. Is that correct? To maintain that $7.5 million, that would not go to the private?
In our agreement, we state that we will maintain them for 16 years or 2 cycles of maintenance. I don't think it's not limited.
This is private, both state and as well as county, correct?
It's throughout the county.
Okay. So this brings into the municipalities. My understanding is there are 27 crossings maintained by municipalities. Is that correct?
27, yep, and
Okay.
5 with DOT.
Perfect. I just picked one city that happened to be in the district that I currently represent. That would be Grant Valcaria. It is a small community. There are 5 that are maintained by them. Have you spoken with either the mayor or anyone on that town council?
I have not.
Has someone from your team spoken with that?
We are doing all the design of these and have to get them permitted. So if they're within the city and require the permitting, then our team is working with them. Keep in mind, we're talking about expanding over 175 miles.
So just to be clear, with this particular agreement, have you spoken, not with the permitting, but this particular agreement?
I've not talked to them about this agreement.
So, and for the benefit of the board, Grant Valcaria has a budget of about $3 million. To put that in perspective, about $1 million, it was like $997,000 this year will go into transportation. These crossings, I've been told, are a couple $100,000 each. They have a 5 to 8 year cycle. To put that in perspective, Grant Valkyria's transportation budget will be swallowed alive by maintaining just the 5 stops. It's not as though the county, yes, it will be expensive, but 15 countywide with a budget of $1.6 billion and Grant Valkyria with a budget of a little less than $3 million, having a third of that, the impact is much greater. And not having spoken with the city and looking at their future budgets, while may be good for the current elected officials, I won't be here when it happens, but as a board, you need to be cognizant of what future boards will have on this. I hadn't looked at it from the safety perspective, of which I probably should be more concerned. I haven't looked at the quiet perspective, which I probably shouldn't be, more concerned. But from the fiscal perspective, understand after these 16 years, the county will be on the hook, and we are in a bargaining position right now. This organization needs us. This is the one opportunity we have, and my ask would be simply maintain it in perpetuity. You have the ability to use it in perpetuity. Just maintain those crossings. If you are willing to do that, I would be more than willing to support this document as it stands, but I'm not willing to leave that burden on future taxpayers. So for that reason, I certainly cannot support it as it stands.
Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not sure where to start. I come to this from a little bit different perspective because I was part of the negotiations way back in 2014. One of the things that I remember from those talks and from reading a book called The Last Train to Paradise, which was about Henry Flagler building the railroad all the way down. And so you can thank the state legislators in 1900 or thereabouts because they gave Henry Flagler this land. Every mile that he moved, they gave him certain amounts of hundreds of acres or thousands of acres. So basically, he got all that property for building the land. They patted him on the back and said, here's some more land, build some more tracks. That company, which has evolved into FEC, and now you guys rent from FEC, or how does that work? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we have an agreement.
You have an agreement. But the bottom line is, those crossings, every time a road goes over a railroad track, that railroad track belongs to them. The area that road goes belongs to them. Is that correct? So they can tell us to go pound sand if they really want to. But they have offered to fund the maintenance, the construction of these crossings and the maintenance. And they never promised that every crossing would be a quiet zone. Because quite frankly, a lot of these crossings are in the middle of nowhere, so there's no point. As an aside, I kind of like the horns. Just call me crazy, but I have one that's not far from my house, and it's kind of like a lot of things. You don't hear it after a while, but then every now and then you hear it, and it's kind of comforting. I like it. But that's neither here nor there. So as part of those negotiations, they didn't have to give us any money. Then they don't have to give us any money now, except that they're trying to be a good partner. Again, as I said, I believe that they can just walk away and say, we're going to cross these roads, and they're your roads, and you're going to have to maintain them. But they're not willing to do that. They're willing to step up and help defray the cost to us. And originally, we had planned on 8 years. We thought that was pretty good. In fact, I think the negotiation was they were willing to give the county 10 years and the cities 6. I believe that's what it was. And we we, the board, didn't think that was quite fair, that the city does not get as much as we did, so we compromised, and we came back to you guys, and then we said, if you would do everybody eight years, then we would do that. Ironically enough, I just discovered that we didn't put a start date on that, so we're going to fix that problem, because technically, I guess the start date could have been any time you said. So, from my perspective, you guys have stepped up, you've done a yeoman's job of doing all this. And I say that from the perspective that way back in the beginning, I was not happy with Brightline at all. As a member of this board, as a member of CFX board, Brightline was a terrible company to deal with at the beginning. They just had, they would say they would get us some report on XYZ date, and 2 months later, they didn't do it. I mean, stuff like that happened all the time. Over the last 2 years, it has changed 180 degrees. You guys have stepped up. You've done everything you said you were going to do. If you say you're going to do something on a certain date, you're getting it done. So I have no problem. I have no issue with this. I welcome having you guys doing what you need to do. And I understand you're going to make a decision on that stop in cocoa based on economics. That's it. It's not going to be because you want to, or you don't want to, or somebody else wants you to, or somebody else doesn't want you to do it. When it makes sense financially, you're going to do it. And I trust that that's going to happen at some point in time. But it's not something that we can hold a gun to your head about. I don't think we should.
I whine a lot.
Well, we know that. And that helps sometimes.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I have to say. I support what you guys are doing. I thank you for being an upright and upstanding organization, that you came to the table and you doubled the 8 years. It's now 16 years, and you don't have to do any of that. We want you to do it, but you don't have to, and I want to make that very clear. You could just walk away from the table and not do it. And as far as the bonds are concerned, correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't cost us anything. We're just giving you our bonding ability. Is that correct? So there's no cost to the taxpayer for any of this. Yes, going forward, Commissioner Tobias is correct. The community is going to have to pay, but that's not till 16 or 17 years down the road. And as I said, they could be paying right now if you guys decided not to do this. But you negotiated with us fairly 7 years ago, and I give you kudos for negotiating with us fairly now. So I support it. I support what you're trying to do. And I can tell you, I had some rows with, round and round with some of your, in my office. Rusty, I can't remember his last name.
Roberts, yeah.
He left my office one time, and there was steam coming out of his ears.
There's a kindler, gentler version now, so.
So,
Now, I have other cards. I'm not sure if you ladies, I'm assuming you're Katie and Alexandra. Do you want to speak, or did you just have cards for questions?
No, we didn't know your process, if you
Okay.
needed our identification, if any of us needed to address you.
Okay, well, since you were called up, do you have anything you want to add? I
No.
know you put in a card to speak, but.
Yes, yeah, just to answer any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Pritchett?
Yeah, Commissioner Smith, thank you. I appreciate that. I did used to watch y'all's meetings and watch negotiation. I was always fascinated of watching what y'all did in the past. I just want to bring up what Commissioner Smith did say, is that I think it's almost unusual that the counties are getting funds back from supporting bonds. So that's good. And I agree, sir. What you guys did with the negotiation was actually fascinating to watch, the way you got the maintenance funds in. And I like this. I would vote it right through, so I'm supporting it. But I do want to mention that the station, and I really think as far as your economic growth, it's a smart thing to do, because we're going to have the Cape traffic moving to Orlando. I think it's going to be a big money producer for you, and as well for us. And I know I watched the Orlando airport increase the economic condition in Orlando. The Melbourne airport has greatly increased the growth of Melbourne. I think that was the catalyst down there for a lot of growth. And I think the stop up here is going to do the same for this area as well. And why I'm saying that as an accountant, the revenues that are going to be produced for that in the county as far as taxes are going to more than cover maintenance past those years, guys, and then some. It's going to be a great driver for the community. So again, I thank you for publicly announcing that you're going to start working on the stop. You said 2022 next year, so I'm hoping it's January. But I want to thank you for that, and I hope we continue to be good partners with you. High-speed rail, it's the travel of the future, and I'm just glad and thankful because I really know there's going to end up being a stop here. I know you're going to do it. And as Commissioner Smith said, he knew it would come from the economy, and I see the economy coming here. We have the highest growth in Brevard County out of all the state of Florida. And I'm watching all the homes come in and the people. So it's going to be smart for you to do it. So I have no doubt that's going to happen. I know I'm repeating myself, but it really is going to cover most of those. It's going to more than cover those costs, guys, with the stop. It just is. And so then with that money, we can start putting other things into our crossings of what we want to do extra as well. So I'm supporting this tonight.
Commissioner Lober?
A few things. First, I stand on my prior arguments. I don't want to repeat more than I have to. I will say that in response to the arguments and the comments that I made, nothing was really rebutted. Essentially, you heard a lot of aspirational comments about what they anticipate. They talked about quiet zone risk index, evaluating the entire county. That's wonderful. And I don't necessarily even doubt that they believe that a majority or all of our crossings will qualify for quiet zones. But their confidence doesn't guarantee that that takes place. There's a mechanism available that I've already identified that would guarantee that we are able to knock out more of the cost if there is a cost associated with that, and if not, we return the money to them, no problem. I will say it was interesting, though, to hear from Commissioner Smith after the Brightline rep came up and mentioned all of the various things that they've done and their confidence that we will qualify for quiet zones across the county, having evaluated the entire county. That they've never promised every crossing would be a quiet zone. That stands in contrast to what we were just led to believe. If someone sees it differently, they're welcome to see it differently. But more importantly, the concept that they don't have to give us anything, yeah, that's technically true. If you're selling your house, someone could walk away without giving you anything, but you also don't have to sell them your house. The fact of the matter is they're here for a reason because they need something from us that's of value. Hence it's a negotiation. There is a value in getting us to okay the agenda item. And as Commissioner Tobias rightfully pointed out, we're in a position of strength at this moment. If we sell ourselves for a cheap fare, we're not going to get that back. We're just not. As far as them stepping up, the bottom line is, if I were them, I wouldn't step up, and I'll tell you why. Because they have a fiduciary duty to be as profitable as possible. They're not a charitable endeavor. Their goal, and it should be in a capitalistic society, one in which we live, make as much money as possible. The Brightline rep had mentioned that the actual individual crossings were evaluated and that the particulars installed or selected for each crossing were determined to be suitable. I heard the word suitable used and most appropriate. Suitable and appropriate, that's interesting to me. It's interesting in that there's really no specificity whatsoever in that. We didn't hear that cost impacts suitability or cost impacts appropriateness, but you'd have to be naive to think otherwise. Obviously, that's a part, and it should potentially be a part that they factor in. I would factor that variable in myself if I were them. If their only goal or their paramount goal were safety over profit, we would have sealed corridors at the dozens and dozens of crossings that we have. Now, I'm not saying if I were them, I would do that. I think there's a balance to be struck, but we have an opportunity as those folks who are elected to represent the over 600,000 people who live in Brevard, an area that's heavily dependent on tourism, where they're going to be impacted as well, to bring in more to the table, not because they're going to step up or do the right thing, but because they're not going to get the vote otherwise. But again, if we give it away, we give it away. That's all I've got.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve this resolution.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Smith.
Second for discussion.
And a second by Commissioner Pritchett for discussion. And I know that I didn't really talk to staff beforehand, but do we have a cost estimate on what, I know 8 years of maintenance isn't just, a one-time thing. I know, obviously, if we have other maintenance issues that come up between a full-on redo, that'll be covered by Brightline, I'm assuming, as part of the agreement?
We have not performed a detailed cost estimate of the maintenance costs. What we have is an idea of what it would cost based on what we've had to pay for the railroad crossings in the recent past before the Brightline improvements have gone in. In most cases, the crossing sizes are doubling in size. An example of that is Michigan Avenue in Coco's gone from 2 railroad tracks to 4. And that's not unusual. Some of them gone from 1 to 2, and there's others examples in there. Also, the nature of the crossings is changing because there's, in some cases, more gates, longer gates, more signals. All of these things wind up having increases in maintenance costs.
But ultimately, and I don't want to cut you off, but ultimately, like it or not, that's the maintenance of those crossings without an agreement would be the county's responsibility, correct? Because it's in our roadway? I mean, our job, that's part of our transportation system, correct?
The ones that are the counties, that is correct.
Okay. And see, and I know it's not a popular opinion, and it's, we can be upset with Brightline, we can hate high-speed rail, we can not like this project, but Commissioner Smith said it, and I think he stated it well, because if you didn't say it, I was going to say it. I mean, it's our responsibility, whether we like it or not. So while, we can say this doesn't cost us anything, you would be paying issuance bond costs elsewhere anyway. So I think that this, obviously, we are in a position to negotiate, and I think this is a fair agreement. So I'm okay with it. It's not perfect, and perpetuity would be ideal. I get it. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's our patrons, it's our citizens, and we're crossing your railroad. Like it or not, and it's not a popular thing to say, but I'll just say it. So I think this is a good agreement. It's not perfect, but I think it's acceptable. So I'll be supporting it. All right, so I have a motion and a second.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you. The concession that Brightline is willing to make is laid out here, $7.5 million bucks. Both you and as well as Commissioner Smith mentioned that this was not perfect but a fair agreement. So you must have more information than I do. My question is, if they're willing to concede $7.5 million, and Commissioner Smith is the businessman up here, so he's the one that understands it. How much does Brightline stand to make by going to this funding mechanism? Is this funding mechanism that they have, this tax exempt funding mechanism, going to save them $8 million bucks, and we're going to receive $7.5 million of that $8 million savings? My understanding is this is $1 billion endeavor. My guess is the fact that they're coming up here, they will be saving tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. So my question is to either one of you who understand this better than I, if it's fair and they're conceding 7.5 and they're a for-profit organization, how much are they getting out of this? That I guess would be the question. You can convince me here if it's only $8 million and they're giving us 7.5, so they save $500,000.
Anytime this board has ever done bonding, we've gotten nothing for doing bonding before as a pass-through. So, I know they're a private business. I'm happy to ask them what their profit margin is, but again, this is our roadway. I think anything that we gain is good. I'm not saying I would agree to anything, but I think, ultimately the safety and those crossings are our responsibility. Those are their tracks. So I'm happy to get maintenance for 16
I'm not
years.
disagreeing, but it was said by both of you, this is a fair agreement. So in order to fair, you have to understand what both sides are getting. I understand what the county taxpayers would be getting, $7.5 million. And then my question is you'd have to understand what they're getting. And I don't know that answer, but you guys have said it's fair, so.
Well, I believe it's fair because we could be, technically, you could have a board up here that wouldn't have gotten to an agreement. We could have gotten a lot less for it because we've bonded without cost before for other agencies, so.
But they did not need us to approve that. So that's what the issue is. We're holding pocket aces right now, right? And there are
So
two.
shake 'em down
And there are
because
two
we
aces.
can?
No, I'm not. Shake them down. This is a company. We're dealing with taxpayers here, right? We have a fiduciary relationship with our taxpayers. And the same way that we're going to have to vote potentially to raise fees for infrastructure because previous boards did not make that decision, those folks 15 years or 16 years from now will be looking back at us, not only the county commissioners. I'm concerned about Grant Valcaria, in all honesty. Understand, this will be 20 to 25% of their budget when this is done. So this, while maybe inconsequential to Brevard County, to some of the municipalities, and just put it this way, so you folks know what 12 are Melbourne. A couple of us represent Melbourne, 3 in Palm Bay, 3 in Cocoa, 1 in Malabar, and 3 in Rockledge. So understand it's, taxpayers in the municipalities as well that will be doing this. All I'm asking is perpetuity. So
I think that's a
question
good question, but I don't have an answer because I don't know what their books are and I don't know what their profits are. But I can tell you that they could go elsewhere and get the money, but they wouldn't get the deal that we're giving them. But we would get zero. That's the side. So we're both giving and we're both getting. That's the deal.
Yes, that I understand that. Thank you. I understand what we're getting. I don't understand what they're getting. I understand that they don't have to do it, and they may have to spend tens or hundreds of millions of dollars extra. They're getting preferential bonding because they get our okay. My question is how much? And you've said it's fair. I understand that we're getting something. You understand that they're getting something.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number on ours. I don't know the number on theirs. You've said it's fair. I'm just asking what that number is. Not a profit margin, how much they're saving.
I don't know, but I'm telling you that it's fair based on the fact that we have no option other than to walk away and we get nothing. That's where it's fair. We're getting something in return that cost us nothing. It cost us nothing to allow them to use our bonding. It cost us nothing. So we're gaining, what, $7 million? Is that what was put aside in addition to the cost of the crossings? So that's what we're getting, and it's costing us nothing. It's costing us in the future. You're exactly correct. When this agreement expires, then all the municipalities in the county are going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay. There's no doubt about that, and that's going to cost money. But we're going to have to start paying from day one if they decide they're going to get their financing from somewhere else.
Madam Chair, they're not showing their hand. We are folding right now on them not showing their hand. And you may not see it as a fold, but they need us more than we need them. There are 7 or 8 counties, all have approved this.
That are getting nothing.
I don't represent the people of Osceola and Palm Beach and Miami-Dade.
Indian River County is getting nothing. Martin County is getting nothing. Indian River, St. Lucie County, they're getting nothing. And they're going to have to pay from day one for all these crossings. These folks are willing to work with us, and we benefit greatly.
And they benefit so much more. But anyway,
Okay,
I'm going to lose this one. I appreciate it.
I call a question. Let's vote on this.
Madam Chair, I've had my item on. I know they've gone
I know,
back and forth.
but Commissioner Pritchett was on before you.
Sorry.
And I don't know if this discussion's going to go,
Yeah, that's why I'm calling the question.
We're
Let's just
probably
vote.
settled, but I do want to ask one question if we
Sure.
vote on this. Mr. Abate, when we take these funds aside from what Brightline's going to give us towards it, where do these funds and the other funds go right now? Are they designated into an account that we use on the Brightline project? It doesn't get moved through the county, correct? We all keep it towards what we need to do with Brightline, correct?
Well, what we put on the agenda item for these funds would be they would go into the Public Works Fund.
Okay.
And yes, so Public Works would have them, and our intent is to use them on railroad crossing related expenditures.
Commissioner Smith and Zonka, because I know you're the ones voting, what I'd like to do is keep it earmarked into something so that we're able to use it either on the crossings or if they get their stuff together and we get a station. I think maybe if we could use part of those to join together with the city on working towards a station. A station's a game changer for us. So we could always bring it back later if you want, but I would like to, if we could do that. If there's no station, no problem. It's always going to the maintenance. But if the station comes, we have that ability maybe to maneuver some of the funds over at our discretion towards, okay, good. Because this is a public purpose. It's getting people from here to there to high speed. It's like an airline. It serves a public purpose. And Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Zonka, some of the things you brought up, I didn't even think about. But if we don't give you these, you get them somewhere else, and you don't have to give us a penny. So this is protecting our community by getting the extra funds into a fund where we have an ability to increase what's good for our community. So if you want to call it, I'm good. I just want to make sure if we do, Commissioners, if you wouldn't mind if we put it into a fund that we have an ability that we can make a choice if the station comes, that we have an ability to use some of these funds towards that as well.
Set it aside for real purposes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner Lober, you have 60 seconds.
That's fine. So the premise that it costs us nothing doesn't mean that what we're offering or what they're seeking has zero value. If you go rent a cabin somewhere, you're essentially, unless you're destroying the place, you're putting next to no use. You're not really harming it in any way, but you're still paying to get it. As far as us trying to seek more value for our constituents being a shakedown, you can call it whatever you want, but we have an obligation to be good stewards of our taxpayer resources and dollars. Whatever they don't pay now is going to be funding that's going to have to come from our constituents. So, if there's ambiguity as to what it is that they're standing to make from this deal, which will tell you whether or not they're willing to walk, I would suggest just continue this out until you get that information and then make a decision. And if they're being fair with us because they're getting something that's not drastically beyond what it is that we stand to benefit, fine, then, go ahead and vote for it. But, the last thing I'll say is, as far as using this money to pay for the station, if we're saying we're going to get $7.5 million or whatever the number is, I believe that may even be inclusive of what was previously negotiated. It's already in the bank, the 3.25 or thereabouts. We're talking about whatever we get now going to offset a business cost for them to put in place a station. Either the station's profitable for them or not. And us putting some trivial amount in the scheme of a station cost is only going to cost us that amount of money. I would not support that now or in the future.
Good. And I would just say, and I'm going to end it with this, then I'm going to call the question. But we just approved grants of tens of thousands of dollars to private people without asking them what their profitability was. I know that's a much smaller number than asking Brightline what yours is, but I find it a little odd. We didn't ask them how much money they're making. We didn't ask them to open their books. And Commissioner Tobias, you didn't vote for it, so I'll give you that. But we just gave them tens of thousands of dollars and didn't ask a single question. So I'll just say that. I'm going to call the question. So,
Commissioner Smith, are you willing to change it, just to change the funds into that we have ability to just spend it on railroad?
Yes. I don't want to subsidize that station. They're going to put one there.
We don't have to, but going railroad, but the city of Cocoa is willing to put in almost $250,000 towards it. So we would just have that ability if we need it to work through something on our behalf.
How much is Cocoa willing to do?
$250,000.
$250,000.
Yeah. So I think we don't have to use it, but that way we don't have to come back and change the personality of it, because these accounts have to stay in accounts. But here's the thing, if it just stays in the rail, it's going to go to the purpose it is right now, but it won't get used on anything except railroad.
So how about if we
just make it for use of railway purposes, but it has to come back to us.
Just railroad purposes come back to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
All right. So are you modifying your
Yes.
motion?
Mhm.
Okay, so motion
have
by
that?
Commissioner Smith to approve with that money set aside for railway purposes to come back to the board if there's action. Second by Commissioner Pritchett.
Yes, ma'am.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Nay.
Motion passes 3-2. That's exhausting.
Yeah.
All right, item J3. You guys need 5 minutes?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, let's take 5. 5-minute break, 7 minutes. Tabaya?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to start with a little background here and then get to where I want to go with this. On August of 2017, the board transferred responsibility for funding the maintenance of the park, Lori Wilson, to the TDO by a 4-1 vote. I, as you guessed, it was the nay vote on that. In FY19, responsibility and maintenance was transferred back to Parks and Rec Department, but still funded by the TDO using tourism tax revenue. In the meantime, the board has approved multiple capital projects totaling millions of tourism tax dollars to improve this park. Over time, staff has identified multiple parks that are also eligible for TDT funding, either through the use of beach park facility funds under Florida statute section 125.0104, subsection 5A5. It's the same mechanism used to fund Lori Wilson or other provisions of the TDT statute, again, Florida section 125, which allows for funding of tourism-related sports arenas and stadiums. This was utilized to pay for the Vieira Regional Park. So those parks that are in the same category as Lori Wilson are Chain of Lakes, Dick Blake, Kiwanis, McKnight Family, Mitchell Ellington, Vieira Regional, Canova Beach, Cherry Downs, Howard Futch, Robert Mirsky Park, and just for reference, not one of those is in County Commission District 3, so I don't want you to think this is self-serving. So here's what I'm looking for. Basically, that we treat everybody the same. We've singled out Lori Wilson. We've put millions of dollars into it. So there's two ways we can go about curing that inequitability of that. One is return responsibility for funding and operation of Lori Wilson back to Parks and Rec, consistent with not only the parks that I've mentioned, but all the other parks that are in the county. Or two, and this is the way I'd like to go, and there are many steps that are involved with that, is take the other parks, again, none of which are located in County Commission District 3, and fund it the same way that we fund Lori Wilson. And of course, there's a third option, and this can be handled simultaneously, and that's handing Lori Wilson over to the city of Cocoa Beach. Recall that $4 million of tax money has already gone into this, so it is that much more of a marketable product. It's my understanding that staff has already had plans to re-engage with Cocoa Beach in the near future regarding negotiations, so I certainly would hope that that would continue. As such, simultaneous to whatever direction the board goes, staff has also requested to continue, I hope, with that. So I'm looking at one of two things. I'd like equity to happen. Inequity is clearly happening. We have cherry-picked one park. Again, I listed all the other ones that are similar to this and could be funded the same way. So either we pull that park out and fund it the exact same way we do, those funds could go back to tourism-related expenses, or we take the other parks that are also tourism-related and fund them through the TDO. I don't care which. All I ask is that we treat all parks the same and we not just cherry pick one. So this is just for discussion. I just want to make folks aware that that this happened in 2017 and we have the ability to rectify this inequity right now. So wanted to hear where the rest of the board was on this inequity that's currently taking place.
Okay, I'm going to go to the cards first. Tom Hermanson, you're the first card. There's only two cards.
Who's up next?
Sandra Sullivan.
I was hoping to hear the Tom Hermanson, 400 Serendipity Lane, Merritt Island. Madam Chair, Commissioners. I was having trouble understanding Commissioner Tabaya's direction, and I'm not sure I still understand it. We maintain our county parks and rec with tax dollars. One could argue that they're all tax dollars, be they general fund or tourism development tax. The plan that was hatched that you all approved, most of you, I think we're here except for Commissioner Lober, was a transformative project to take Lori Wilson Park, which is at the heart of our tourism sector in Cocoa Beach and turn it into that much more of an attraction, because it had suffered from years and years of neglect and maintenance under the management of the county parks and recs. And the tourism industry recognized what a jewel it potentially could be and sought your approval to spend upwards of $5 million to create a tourist destination in that park, be it venues for music and everything else. It would be a gem both for visitors and residents alike. COVID came, and the TDC later found out the extent to the deferred maintenance and how much it was. Obviously, the TDC's funds were cut back due to COVID, although the commission approved the use of upwards of $2.5 million to address that deferred maintenance, which has now happened, and it will only continue to be maintained if there's a resource, hopefully, to maintain that going forward, which is really what I was hoping you all would discuss today, which is the next item. All parks are not the same. We have a Parks and Rec department, which is funded presumably by property tax. This park specifically is in the heart of the tourism district. If you wish to pull it back into Parks and Rec, that's fine. What I'd like you to discuss, hopefully, is to come up with ongoing funding mechanism in order to maintain these parks, so we're not back here again in 10 years looking to spend millions of dollars again cleaning up Lori Wilson Park in the heart of our tourism district. That mechanism, logically, is a user fee. User fee for parks, I believe, logically, is parking. Cocoa Beach charges $15, I think, to $20 per day for cars to charge in their parks around us. The owners of the pier charge $20 on weekdays and $30 on the weekends, and they're sold out. Cocoa Beach generates $2.5 million in parking revenues. It doesn't have to be that rate, but it should be some rate. I think the general public understands that maintaining parks to a high standard costs money. And so hopefully you all can discuss having a user fee for that park, the high impact parks, unlike several of the other parks that Commissioner Tobias listed, and consider a user fee so that we can continue to maintain and improve these parks going forward. Thank you.
That was well timed.
All right.
I think he was watching the clock.
Yeah.
Ms. Sullivan?
Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. So I like the idea, number two, that the tourist parks have funding from the TDT. However, that mechanism is worked out. And I was just going to say that I would prefer not to see parks being given to municipalities. I would be adverse to that idea. In my own community, we saw parks being given to a municipality, and then we find that there are terms of those covenants being not held up. There is issues with the park maintenance. They don't have the resources that the county has. I documented for a few years quite a few of those issues. I think as we move forward, we have a growing county. The utilization of our parks since COVID is they're full now. And we need to look at the bigger picture of funding even additional spaces on beaches, and looking at this particular issue not as just a Lori Wilson issue, but doing a cost analysis, some maybe study of funding the parks moving forward. I would say in my community, with the parks full, we look at, for example, Spa Park. There's empty lot sitting next door with twice the parking area, and then another lot beyond that. If you look at the grant process with Florida Forever Fund, and also DeSantis's resiliency, which is funding $740 million for 2022. There's a lot of grant money out there for acquisition of parks, but maintaining it. And then this sort of morphs into a bigger question too of the parks that are the Eels parks. Are we going to put it to referendum in 2022 for the voters to vote on that, because those funds right now, the EELS funds, are maintaining those parks. And if that terms out in 2024, there's no funding mechanism for that. So there's a big picture here to consider. I think a study needs to be done and looking at the funding mechanism of all our parks. I would like to say thank you to the county, to the improvements that you've done beachside. We had homeless camps in some of our parks. You put up new signs. They work very hard, and we're very appreciative of the parks. But I would not feel good about when you look at your parks as a tourism asset. You want to have the control over the quality of that product, which is your tourism product. And so I would keep them in the county where you have a lot more resources, periodic burns, and much more resources than what a city has. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, that's all the cards I have. Commissioner Lober?
All right, and I apologize to the extent that I'm going to mix a little bit of J3 and J4 together, but based on kind of where we are time-wise and the subject matter, I think it's somewhat unavoidable. First and foremost, I think it's interesting and kind of funny in a way that both J3 and J4 have kind of similar wording qualifying the agenda item. My item, and it appears Commissioner Tobias' item as well, are both discussion items. I'll tell you right now that I would be very disinterested in making a vote on either of the items tonight, but I think this is something that absolutely warrants our discussion. I'll say one thing in terms of Commissioner Tobias' comments, that it's essentially not fair that Lori Wilson is singled out. I don't necessarily agree with Mr. Hermanston on everything, but Tom had mentioned that Lori Wilson is in the heart of our tourism district or tourism sector. I agree. And I think that there is certainly a delineation between community parks that are truly that and parks that are drivers of tourism or that are that fundamentally tied into the tourist economy and sector. So obviously A1A in the heart of Cocoa Beach, next to where this Weston project is slated to go, is a unique location. But that said, I will acknowledge that it doesn't necessarily feel intrinsically fair that one park is treated differently than others, even if there are valid reasons for doing that. Whether we transfer the park to a city, namely Cocoa Beach, I have spoken with Cocoa Beach for years about terms that would be potentially acceptable from my perspective to handing over the reins to them to take it off of our balance sheet so that they can maintain it in a way that they're satisfied with, protecting our constituents and protecting its use as a park, protecting folks in the county, and we've not arrived in common ground. Now they have a new city manager over there. I'm hopeful that perhaps that may change the outlook a little bit. I'm open to it with a number of conditions. I've spoken with even Cape Canaveral about transferring Cherry Down Park, and there's been some substantial interest with that. But again, there are certain conditions that to me are threshold issues to exploring that. Now, I think the point that Tom made that's probably the most important is the item about identifying an ongoing funding mechanism. To me, I think we have to look at a sustainable path forward, and part of that, in my estimation, is having visitors defray a meaningful portion of the cost, and that's really what drove this next agenda item that I put on. In that, user fees are a means to do that. Yes, residents pay user fees, but visitors pay them as well. Whereas, generally speaking, for our Parks and Rec MSTU, the visitors aren't paying that at all. That's coming from locals, that's coming from residents. I feel much more comfortable having a portion defrayed by the folks that are actually using the parks, many of whom are in fact visitors, especially at some of these tourism-heavy parks that are beachside. Now, to the degree that the TDT offsets it entirely, it's great for locals, but is it really fair? Does it really keep in play the dollars that can be used for other worthwhile opportunities? I don't know that it does. So I just wanted to bring up this next item to see kind of where folks are at. I'm happy to kind of let it take back seat if it's possible to separate J2 from J3, or pardon me, J3 from J4. But I really am interested in finding some path forward. So as was said, we're not back here in 10 years or 5 years or 11 years discussing the same problem with no clear end in sight. So that's where I'm at.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Thank you, ma'am. I support item J4, and let me tell you why.
4 or 3?
4, since he mixed them together.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'm looking at J3 and like Chain of Lake Parks. All of these parks have user fees. I have a granddaughter, Alexa Shea, 13 years old, plays on the Titans girls fast pitch softball. She was at Veer a little while ago. They travel all over the country. They'll host tournaments here, and they pay some pretty hefty tournament fees to pay for the field. So they're already happening. We have people that use things that have user fees that do help to pay for upkeeps on these parks. As far as Lori Wilson, you know, it needs to be staying clean. We have the bathrooms and stuff there. It needs the funds to do it, and I think user fees are absolutely reasonable to use them. I don't think that's much money to use that as well. I would not be in favor of transferring any more of beaches over to cities, particularly because we lived through COVID. And if county didn't have any of those beaches, we would have people that wouldn't have been able to be outside. And so I'm not going to support transferring the beaches. I like keeping them in the county, and they're good assets for us. But when you come to item J4, I'm going to support it, and just because we're already paying a lot of user fees at the park regardless.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I have this up on my whiteboard, and I've had it up on my whiteboard almost since 2017. Just other things have taken priority. So the question is, and we'll get to J3 in a minute, or J4 in a minute, whatever. Is the board supportive of the inequity of funding for Lori Wilson? If you are, that's fine. I'll let it go. But I just want to find out if you're okay with this inequity. If you're not okay with the inequity of how it is funded, I've given two options for us to investigate. So all I'm looking for is direction here, and then we can move on to fleecing taxpayers for parking fees. So I don't want to say where I'm going to be on that one, but fleecing taxpayers for parking fees. And of course the tourism industry loves it because they're charging for parking, right? They don't want to see that take place. So, and I'm sorry, Mr. Hermanson doesn't understand the inequity, even though it was extremely clear. And when he stood up here, he clearly understood what I was trying to do. But anyway, I'm looking for the board direction. Just tell me no. We're absolutely okay with treating this one park differently than every other park out there, and I will erase it off my board and move on to fighting another windmill out there.
Commissioner Lober?
Mr. Tobias, it's not that I'm either okay or not okay. I'm looking at a sustainable path forward. And the reason that I say that is because I don't think the current status quo is going to remain in place indefinitely. And I'd rather be involved in the process of determining something that we can actually do moving forward, whether it's shifting entirely out of the TDT or whether it's reducing the amount of the TDT and supplementing it with part of the MSTU or with parking fees. I'm trying to figure out essentially what the board's comfort level is, and hearing from Commissioner Pritchett, for instance, that essentially she's adamantly opposed to transferring any of the county parks to cities. I'm a little surprised by that. When I alluded to having conditions that were threshold issues for me, among those conditions, and this certainly isn't the entirety of it, but that they would have to be maintained as parks in perpetuity. We could, if giving them away is essentially a trigger for folks to oppose, I'm fine looking at long-term leases. Again, provided that we don't have them used for some purpose other than as a park, and provided, among other things, again, that we don't favor the municipalities' residents over residents of other portions of the county. I think there are a lot of intricacies that need to be hammered out in order to make sure that actually happens in practice. But I really was just trying to get some guidance for my item. But no, I'm not, at the face of it, I'm not thrilled with the item that you proposed, but I've not made a decision as to any of this, and I just want to gather some more info at this point to figure out where I want to go moving forward.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I honestly don't know where that was. I'd make a motion to table. I think where Commissioner Lober is going on this is he's trying to get it to J4, and that may supplant J3. So I would table J3, and I guess if there's an additional funding mechanism, again, which I'm not going to support, but it seems like there would be a second on that one, this may take it off the table, and not only would we be treating it in a fashion that was not equitable, it would be even less equitable by doing that. So I'll make a motion to table J3 till after J4.
I have a motion by Commissioner Tobias to table. Do I have a second?
Do you even need a motion?
Huh?
Do you even need a motion?
You said you wanted to,
Till after we vote on J4.
do we need a motion to table? And we can just, yeah, we can reorder. We'll do J4. So, okay. Commissioner Lober?
Okay, as I said, I've kind of mixed the two, and I apologize for any difficulties that may have created. As far as it being inequitable or less, less appropriate for locals here, again, the concern and the difference in my mind is when you have MSTU funds being used for parks and rec facilities, that's being shouldered entirely 100% by locals. If you have user fees, parking fees, anything of that sort, everyone that visits the park is paying it, irrespective of whether they're a visitor or whether they're a local, so you capture a portion of the overall cost by visitors. That, to me, is the beauty of considering an approach like that. I'm not saying I'm sold and that that's the way to move forward. There may be other ideas that are sustainable, but I really just wanted to get a feel. And I've gotten one from Commissioner Pritchett in terms of where she's at. I've gotten one from Commissioner Tobias. I'm just hoping to get a little bit more maybe from the other two commissioners up here so that I'll know moving forward what I intend to put on the agenda. And then hopefully at that point in time, I can also have an opportunity to hear from some of the constituents over there, whether they love it or hate it.
Okay, I have 3 cards. Janice Scott, and after Janice, Tom.
Yep, me again. I find myself in a difficult position because I have always felt that parks should be open and free to the public and everybody, and we should kumbaya and have a great time. However, as a resident of Cocoa Beach, I pay $20 a year for a parking pass. And if you see in the little handout I gave to Mr. Abate, it's a terrible rough draft, but just to give you an idea, when I saw this item on the agenda, if you see the list of amenities at Fisher Park, where the fee is $15 a day, or $2.50 an hour, that's basically what Cocoa Beach is charging. But look at all the things you get. Essentially, people are coming from out of Brevard County. Every Commissioner Tobias, every county has its unique personality or people that frequent it. And it would be hard for a resident of Cocoa Beach, unless they're walking across the street, to get into Lori Wilson Park because it's packed. Almost every space, they park on the grass. And I really do think, even if you charged only $5 a day, with a kiosk or something, you'd generate $1,370 a day, which would support the park, or $480,000 a year. Now, I know you could do some statistical smoothing or whatever to get some more accurate figures, but like Mirsky Park, you would have a revolt if you tried to do anything to charge fees in Mirsky Park, because it's mostly the residents within a couple of blocks that usually may drive there to bring their surfboards rather than bike them over or something like that. So I really do think that should take the burden of Lori Wilson, for one, just to try it out, take it off the taxpayers' back. For a single-family home, you probably pay $50 a month for water and sewer. These people are going there and getting water and sewer day in, day out for free. Thank you.
All right, Tom? You gonna pass? Okay, so Sandra Sullivan?
I was just wondering how many of the parks are really key to tourism here in Brevard? And I would just go back to saying to maybe a cost-benefit analysis, I'm looking at, there's like $5 for parking, but, to do a proper analysis and of, say, the tourism parks, but I mirror what Jana said about keeping the community parks at this point in time free of parking charges, but, maybe looking at those tourism centers that are more the tourism coming through. And then, there might be more than just this one park, especially with the development of some of the other areas in Brevard County that may be appropriate. But doing a proper study first is to do the cost-benefit analysis and work with the budget numbers. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm going to tell both you guys what you want to hear from me. Whether you want to hear it or not, I don't know, but I'm going to answer your questions. I'm in favor of giving any county park to a city that wants it. One of the first things I did when I took office was facilitate, and I don't remember the name of the park, but it was in Palm Bay. And
Regional.
what was it?
It was Palm Bay Regional now, Fred Poppy.
Okay, yep, that's it. So, yes, so I'm in favor of doing that, but I am also 100% in favor of user fees because, as has already been pointed out, we've got parks that are attractions. They're not just parks that families go to recreate. These are parks that people come to with a purpose, and the purpose is to be on or near the beach and be on or near a tourist destination. And so I think that it would be most appropriate to charge a competitive fee. If you want to make it a little bit cheaper than surrounding parks, that's something that can be debated. I don't really care one way or the other, but I think that's it in a nutshell.
Commissioner Lober?
A couple things. First, as far as competitive fees, I'm not looking at competing with the tourism sector. In fact, I think even if we have to use a portion of the MSTU to offset the cost of maintaining or improving a park, I can deal with that. The goal is to defray a significant portion of it and to have the visitors pay a significant portion of it, not necessarily to eliminate it altogether. I think we can take a step in that direction without it being an all-or-nothing approach. If we phase it out, I think that's a potential way moving forward where if we phase it out and we leave it on the TDT rolls for a period of time and phase it toward a user fee approach, supplemented potentially by the MSTU, we can continue to make some improvements in that area as that area around it continues to improve as well, having a clear end in sight as far as it remaining on the TDT. But yeah, I definitely, if they're charging, and I'm throwing a number out here, I'm not saying this is what they charge, but let's say they charge 20 or 30 bucks next door. I don't think that we factor that in whatsoever in terms of determining what a reasonable fee is. I think we set it at a relatively low rate because, again, the goal with this isn't to rake in money hand over fist. The goal is to offset that cost, not to gouge folks. Because keeping in mind, yes, there are a lot of tourists that come to visit, let's say Lori Wilson, for instance. The fact is you still have some locals that go there. There's no question that you have some locals that go there. Yes, parking is difficult. I've had a hard time parking there on a number of occasions. It could be a gorgeous park, but I think moving forward, if this comes back, which I imagine it may well, I'll probably have some kind of an amalgam of what we discussed tonight that'll involve a transition period as well. And hopefully I'll have some input from some other constituents because this is a major park. I'm not dead set on doing anything until I hear from folks and really get a better idea in terms of what folks over there think. If the city wants to chime in, certainly as it's located within their bounds and it certainly impacts them, I would be interested to hear what their perspective is. But I think I've gotten more of what I needed at this point to at least do some math and understand that what I'm looking to accomplish to keep this sustainable and to ensure that visitors, in fact, do pay their fair share, that we can do that moving forward. So I've gotten what I needed to get out of the item, and at this point, I'm not going to ask to take any action on it.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I do just want to remind us that when we went through that COVID period, and this board followed the science with the governor, and being outside at the beaches was just a wonderful thing to do. We only had 2 small areas that we were allowed to let people into, and Lori Wilson was one of them. So I realized right then how important it was that we don't give up all ability for us to have things at our discretion of what we feel is good for our community. So I just really want to throw that out there, because before that, I was in favor of moving it over, but I realized right then it really ties our hands as far as the community. We drove up there a few times, and that's when I started realizing how much love it needs. And it wouldn't have bothered me a bit to throw in a few dollars to help get that, the bathrooms and facilities upgraded some. So again, whatever you want to do with user fees, I'm on board with it, because a lot of places that we
Thank you.
visit as far as parks, I have that as well. But I do want to throw us caution with that. Once we give up that ability and we have any kind of thing happen again, and this board feels like it's necessary to allow people to be outdoors, we will have hardly no ability at that point to have any place that we can allow as our governing board to allow that to happen. So I just want to throw that caution out. Otherwise, I was in favor of it before, but I really realized when we went through that how important it is that we leave some ability open for us to make those decisions and have input.
Seeing no more lights, and I agree with you, and I'm glad you brought that up because I hadn't considered that. Now, if it was any other park that was inland, I'd be the first person to say transfer to the city, but I think,
That's my feeling as well.
and because, I was in Palm Bay when we got that park, so I get it. I mean, I think municipalities should be responsible for those parks, but on beach, I think you're absolutely right. I am not 100% opposed to user fees, at least when it comes to the tourism. I don't know how you officially designate a touristy park. Definitely the smaller local parks I probably wouldn't be interested in, and that may solve your problem as far as, who funds what kind of maintenance, and we actually may even have a better product at the end of it. And I would just say that, if we do look at that, maybe have Parks and Rec come back with some numbers on what it costs every year for certain parks, and we can probably base our fees on that, and perhaps, residents won't have to pay, or their fees will be nominal, so it won't be impactful to them.
May I?
Yes.
Because that's something that I had hoped to be able to do. I think that's unlikely in a majority of our beachside parks. A lot of the agreements, the grant agreements that we've entered into, preclude us from in any way discriminating against any Floridian or in favor of any Floridian over another. So it is something where I would love to say it's free for Brevard residents, and we're just basically going to gouge the tourists that come here. But that's very unlikely to be something that we can lawfully implement.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm willing to look at it. I don't know that I'll support it, but definitely. And again, we may end up with a better product, which actually brings more people here. So I'm good with it.
Maybe you can just charge for a seat at the park.
Alrighty.
All right. Do we want to go back to J3, or did we talk about it enough, or?
Madam Chair?
Sure.
I'll tell you what, if I get, we're okay with the inequities that exist in the way that we fund this park, I promise never to bring it back. I'm just confused where folks are. I think Commissioner Lober got pretty good answers that at least 3, potentially 4 folks are okay with fees. Please don't be confused in any way. If the fee's 50 cents or $50, the result will be the same for me. I will be against it. But I'm just asking for clarity on where the rest of this board is, so I know to never bring it up again, which I won't if that's the case. But I don't know, Commissioner Pritchett, where you stand on it. Chair Zonka or Commissioner Smith, are you okay with the way that this is currently funded, being the only park that gets its revenue from the TDO? If you're not, these are 2 ways that we can potentially fix it. I would, of course, bring it back to the board. If you're okay with it being that way, I'm not trying, I'm okay with a no is what I'm looking, or I'm okay with a yes. I just want to erase this off my whiteboard because it's been up there quite some time. It's something that's bothering me. I will accept a no. I'd just like to hear from you guys. There's an issue out there, and maybe it's not an issue to you. So
I'm going to give you a qualified no. I'm not adverse to listening to what you have to say at some later date, but at this point, I don't see any reason to change it.
Okay, you're okay with the, okay, perfect. Madam Chair,
Yes.
are you okay with the way that?
Well, I want to find a way so they don't have to fund it. I know that, again, I think the maintenance that needed to be brought up to speed, and I think it is you could classify it as a tourism designation, so I don't disagree with that. But because you keep characterizing it as inequity, doesn't make it as awful as you're trying to make it sound. So I don't agree with you on that.
Madam
No,
Chair,
I
there's
get,
one park, and then there's every other
exactly,
park
and if
out
you can
there.
compare Lori Wilson to some of those little parks that don't have tourists, they're not equal.
Howard
So
Futch is in your
it's a-
district, and
it's a matter of
that's always
opinion.
jam-packed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's
Exactly.
just as jam-packed, yet funded in a different way in which Lori Wilson
Correct.
is. So that is,
But
in
clearly
my,
got a lot more maintenance than
But those
Lori
aren't-
Wilson did
those
over the
aren't
years.
Tourists, are they?
What?
They're locals.
Most of them are locals, yeah.
Right, so that makes it
okay, so
totally different.
okay, so forget about inequity. How about the status quo? Is that
Well, I
make you
think
feel-
that we're actually going to look at some options to get it out of the TDO. I think that's
Well,
the
that's
next
what,
step.
Madam Chair, that's what this is right here. The two options right here.
But you're giving us two options that are right at this very moment that I don't necessarily agree with or disagree with, but there's not a lot of detail in them. I mean, Cocoa Beach, we've never been able to come up with an agreement with them to take the park. I don't want to give up access to the beach because you saw what those mayors did. They closed all the beaches during COVID.
Yep.
And I don't want to see that happen again. So I will not agree with transferring to the city.
Yep. Okay.
If
That's helpful. We've got, I mean, anytime staff gets direction is wonderful, even though it's contrary to where I may stand. It's very clear that two folks, even though the word asset was thrown around, when it's, a park is, as you guys, as Commissioner Smith as a businessman knows, is a liability. It's something that we pay that we don't get back. So the definition of asset, I didn't do very well in financial accounting, but I do know the difference between an asset and a liability, and it is unfortunately a liability, and it's certainly not an asset. So, Madam Chair, one last question, because I think I have one and a
Are we having a
half.
conversation or are we running a meeting? I mean, you want to bring something to this board for us to
I
consider?
did, and that's the point, and no one did the time and will give me a straight answer, Madam Chair, and that's all
I
I'm
did.
asking for.
I did. I said I'd be willing to talk about it later. I'm not going to give you an answer now,
Commissioner
other
Lober?
than I'm not adverse to transferring parks to cities. I've already told you. I'm good.
I'm going to bring something back in all likelihood, unless something drastic happens between now and, let's say, the next couple of meetings. I would anticipate that there'll be an item, let's say by no later than the end of January, on one of our meetings dealing with Lori Wilson and, in all likelihood, a transition plan.
I was going to say which will actually get it out of the funding of the TDO. So there's your
Yes.
answer, Commissioner Tobias.
Yeah, because I think, realistically, whether I want it to stay there or not, it's not going to in perpetuity.
And I want to see a plan. I want to see what
Yeah.
the plan is because we can't let it get into the condition it was before. And that's the fear that I have.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, I have no public comment cards, thankfully, just because I don't want to waste anybody else's time. So moving on to board reports. Mr. Abate?
I have no report.
Ms. Jorenby?
No report.
Commissioner Pritchett? No report. Commissioner Lober?
Pass.
Commissioner Tobias?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our county manager was in the news this weekend, or this week, so I wanted to point it out. The port is going to raise the captain's salary again, and they referenced our county manager. It says that Murray's contract at $374,920, the base salary is more than 70% higher than those of Brevard Public Schools. Mark Mullins, $218,190, and Brevard County Manager Frank Abate. Remember that that's an organization that has a little over 10% of what we have. My point here is we have a great deal in a manager, and the port continues to raise the captain's salary. And second of all, our session, the legislative session, is going to start January 11th. There's a fun bill out there that I want you guys to be aware of. I'm not asking you to take sides on it because I think we would be on opposite sides, but I want you to be aware of it because it passed its first committee stop. That would be Senate Bill 620. This allows businesses to sue the county if we put in ordinances or zoning that would cost, would show a loss to businesses of 15% or higher. So it made it through its first stop. Just be aware, this seems to be a Senate priority. So just something to watch no matter what side you're on this one. It is moving, and engage one way or another.
Commissioner Smith?
No report.
And I have no report. So with that, this meeting's adjourned. 8:12.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.